The brass brazier hissed, sputtering coils of orange smoke that clung to the wobbling tent poles like ghosts intent on whispering. Viserys Targaryen watched the curling vapors slide across his forearm and vanish into the dark leather of his sleeve, thinking of the molten gold that had nearly ended him days before. The memory still sizzled where the rim of Drogo's cooking pot had grazed his brow. A fleck of cooled metal remained fused to the skin over his right temple, a tiny starburst fragment that glittered whenever firelight caught it. He would not permit the flicker of pain to show on his face now, not while the Khalasar slept beyond the low dune and the Dothraki girl emptied another ladle of spice-scented stew into his bowl. He tasted garlic, goat, and saffron, but mostly he tasted the promise of vengeance. Each swallow warmed the raw line of his throat where Daenerys had pressed a damp cloth after they dragged him. Gasping from the cooking pit, she had wept when he collapsed. Perhaps she believed the wound would humble him, had hoped to awaken the brother she faintly remembered from the man who had sold her to a horse lord. But little sisters, he reflected, rarely understood the alchemy of kingship. Humiliation, if it did not kill, transmuted into something harder than any crown, into purpose. A noise rattled the hanging brass medallions strung across the tent flap. Mormont ducked inside, stooping beneath the crossbar, his breath misting in the cool desert air. The exiled knight's greaves were crusted with the pale dust of Vaes Dothrak's roads. He set a small burlap satchel on the carpet beside Viserys and knelt. 3 days' ride east, Yora said in the hushed common tongue. I found the traitor as promised. His stock was lean. Some emeralds, a sack of old Volantine coins, and these. He opened the satchel. 3 cracked eggs gleamed like dusklit river stones. The first shimmered green, flecked with bronze veins. The second bore a shell of midnight blue speckled silver. The last was a warm gray patterned in swirls of faded crimson. Viserys traced the rough lattice of the gray shell with an unsteady finger. Heat pulsed beneath the surface, faint as the flutter of a mouse's heart. They are warm, he murmured. Only when held, Mormont replied. The traitor said they were fossil relics, but I recalled what the Lyseni texts whispered about dragons in dormancy. Viserys forced his other hand to lie flat on his knee. He must not grasp like a beggar. Did you swear the man to silence? With coin, the knight answered, and steel. His lips will never open again. A pinprick of guilt struck Viserys, not for the traitor, whose blood he would never see, but for the man kneeling before him. Mormont served out of shame and a lonely man's hunger for absolution. Viserys would give him neither, yet he needed him. Daenerys had her horse lord and the womb that might quicken with stallion seed. Viserys had only this crumbling band of conspirators and the eggs that glimmered like dead moons. He lifted the gray egg with care and cradled it against his burned temple. A single tear, born of heat or hurt or something unspoken, ran down his cheek. One day, Ser Yora, the world will bow to dragons again. But first it must learn to fear the name Viserys. He set the egg aside and rose, stiff but resolute. We leave at dawn for Qohor. Gather the Sellsword captains you trust. I will give them gold. Later, I will give them fire. Mormont inclined his head. And your sister? A dragon feeds where it wills. Let Daenerys nurse her call and her unborn warhorse. When my banners rise, she will remember to whom she owes her life. Outside, the wind hunted across the dunes, tugging at tethered yokes and rattling bone chimes. Somewhere in the endless night, a stallion screamed, startled from sleep. Viserys listened and heard triumph in the echo. The journey east unspooled beneath a sky of hammered silver. By day, the travelers rode swift Qohoric horses, their hooves leaving thin crescents in the parched earth. By night, they pitched black tents stitched from the hides of shadowcats. Viserys kept the eggs wrapped in layers of lamb's wool inside a cedar trunk lashed to the pack mule. At every camp, he would draw one out, never the same twice, and hold it against his chest while he whispered bits of the old Valyrian hymns Illyrio had taught him in the manse at Pentos. He spoke softly, certain that words born in flame must be coaxed like embers, not shouted. What hatched within him was not song but steel. He learned to sleep little, wake quickly, and drink sparingly of the sour wine Mormont offered. A king who intended conquest could not cloud his wits. He studied maps by lantern light, the flat grasslands of the disputed lands, the pale curve of the Rhoyne, the filthy arteries of the free cities. Somewhere amid those crooked alleys and opulent plazas, he must find men whose loyalty could be bought, mortgaged, or bent. When at last the black pines of Qohor appeared, rising like spears from the misted horizon, Viserys felt an itch behind his scar, an ornamental pain, a jewel of suffering to remind him why he breathed. He rode ahead of the caravan, trailing only Mormont, and crossed the broad timber bridge that spanned the river Volina. Black goats clambered across moss-slick arches, bleating, as though sounding a cracked trumpet for his arrival. In the foreign quarter they found lodgings at the House of Nine Fires, an inn renowned for its crimson-lacquered hearths and the quiet discretion of its matron, a dough-faced woman called Mother Vera. She offered rooms for coin and silence for a heavier purse, though Viserys suspected she sold secrets as richly as she sold spiced wine. He paid her enough to make betrayal expensive. That night, while dancers spun beneath lanterns in the courtyard, he met with captains of 3 Sellsword companies, the Sorrowful Men of Lys, the Brazen Shields, and a ragged offshoot of the Second Sons led by a Tyroshi named Miles the Tawny. Viserys sat at the head of a long cedar table, the gray dragon egg resting in a velvet cradle before him. Candles flared in the shell's gleam. The captains eyed it, some with awe, others with the hungry caution of jackals studying a wounded stag. "You know me," Viserys began, voice low yet carrying. "You know my father's throne was stolen by usurpers. The wolf's cubs tear at the corpse of a realm that should burn with dragon's fire. I would see that fire rekindled in Westeros and beyond. Lace your fortunes to mine, and you will drink from the skulls of lords." The Brazen Shield's captain, a stocky Volantene missing half his nose, grunted. "Dragons are dead, Silver Prince. Your egg is but a bauble." Viserys smiled. "Dead things may breathe again when fed with faith and blood." He gestured to Ser Jorah, who drew his arak and sliced his palm. Dark red drops spattered the shell. Steam hissed. The green captain flinched. The egg scales glimmered brighter a moment, as though a candle had bloomed within. The shell grew warm. Viserys felt its pulse against the velvet. The captains leaned forward like worshippers. "This," Viserys said, "is the heart of my golden company of dragons. Swear to me, and when the hatchling cracks the shell you will ride beneath wings of shadow. Refuse, and one day those wings will blot out your sun." Silence flooded the room. Miles the Tawny was first to kneel. One by one, the others followed, each pricking a finger to smear blood across the egg. Viserys watched their submission with a serene detachment, like a sculptor admiring the first rough chips that reveal the statue hiding in stone. Weeks flowed like ink. The Golden Company of Dragons, so named to evoke the storied mercenaries who had once backed Blackfire pretenders, began as whispers in Qohor's alleys, rumors that slithered west on the backs of caravans and east upon the gulls that skimmed the summer sea. Viserys fostered those whispers by paying scribes to compose ballads of his impending triumph, distributing silver stags stamped with the 3-headed dragon to children who sang his praises in the bazaar, and granting audience to any exile who professed loyalty, no matter how tattered his cloak. Even failures could serve. They cluttered throne rooms and banquet halls, chattering of the Silver Prince whose very name scratched the eardrum of power. He claimed an abandoned manse beyond the Black Goat Gate. Its walls had once belonged to a Qohoric magister accused of sacrificing orphans. Now they were hung with crimson banners marked by a single gray dragon spiraling upon a shattered crown. In the courtyard Mormont drilled the newest recruits, battering them into phalanx discipline. The clang of practiced steel rang from dawn until dusk. Viserys would pace the balcony and watch, egg cradled in his arms, breathing the oily smoke of braziers kept burning day and night to warm the shell. But fire alone would not birth a dragon. Late one moonless midnight he descended to the manse's cellar, a damp warren beneath the stone foundations where dark water pooled ankle-deep. A cage of black iron awaited, its bars twisted like vines. Within knelt a Lycini apothecary who had promised knowledge of dragonflame rituals but instead tried to sell the secret for thrice the coin and a girl from the inn's kitchen. Mormont found him spilling lies at Mother Vera's hearth and hauled him to the cage. Viserys approached. "Your price grew expensive, healer. My patience, unlike Valyrian steel, is brittle." The apothecary trembled. "Mercy, my prince. I know how to quicken the egg. Blood of noble stock, blood mixed with wildfire. The priests of R'hllor. Wildfire." Viserys knelt, splashing dark water. Steam coiled from the surface where torchlight touched. "Such alchemy is the guarded art of the Guild of Pyromancers in King's Landing. You possess wildfire." "A vial," the man whispered. "Enough for one blaze. Feed it with royal blood." Viserys rose. Royal blood. He considered the apothecary's quivering form, clad in silk, yet stinking of fear. "You claim knowledge worth a crown. Then pay." He withdrew a slim stiletto from his belt, its grip shaped like a twisted dragon tail. Before the apothecary could cry out, Viserys slit the man's throat. Dark arterial spray hissed onto the floor. As the body toppled, Viserys pressed the gray egg into the gushing wound. Blood soaked the shell, and the egg shuddered in his hands. Tiny hairline fractures rippled across the surface, emitting sparks of faint crimson light. Mormont stepped forward, sword half-drawn. "My prince, watch!" Viserys cradled the trembling egg, staining his sleeves crimson. Heat radiated like a forge. He did not flinch. "Fetch the vial." The knight obeyed, returning moments later with a small stoppered glass sphere. Pale green wildfire sloshed within, glimmering sickly. Viserys pried the stopper with his teeth and drizzled the fluid over the shell. The moment green liquid kissed red blood, a violent white flame erupted, licking up Viserys' arms. He felt no pain, only a roaring in his ears like wings beating. The egg cracked with a sound like thunder rolling beneath a frozen lake. A jagged fissure split the shell. Out of the crevice spilled a plume of black smoke, coils of shadow that coalesced into the form of a hatchling, scaled in dark silver, eyes glowing molten gold. It lay in his palms, steaming, heartbeat a furious tremor. Mormont gasped. "By the seven." Viserys smiled, teeth wolf-bright. "By fire and blood," he corrected. "My dragon." The hatchling keened, a tiny shriek that reverberated through the cellar. Flames guttered in response, bowing inward as though pulled by an invisible tide. Viserys raised the creature to his cheek. Its tongue, forked and glowing orange, tasted the air, then licked the gold fragment embedded in his temple. The wound ceased aching. Morning found the manse alive with rumor. Soldiers halted their drills to stare at the creature perched upon Viserys' shoulder, wings no larger than a raven's yet casting a silhouette already too vast for their imaginations. The Silver Prince strode the courtyard, dragon balanced upon his pauldron, eyes fixed on the horizon. He spoke a word in Valyrian. The hatchling flared its wings and belched a thread of silver-blue flame that scorched the practiced dummies into blackened husks. Men fell to one knee, armor clattering. Some wept. Viserys lifted his chin. "This is only the first. 2 more shells wait to crack. Kneel now, swear fealty, and when the sky is thick with my children, you will rise as lords beneath their wings." The captains knelt, swords laid flat, swearing before God and God alike. The Golden Company of Dragons was no longer a rumor. It was a prophecy in flesh and flame. Word galloped across Essos on swift hooves and swifter tongues. In Bravos, the Sea Lord's counselors debated whether to extend loans to a Targaryen pretender now rumored to command living dragons. In Myr, merchant princes emptied coffers hiring assassins who might cut out the rumor's heart before it took flight across the narrow sea. In Pentos, Illyrio Mopatus closed his eyes and hummed to himself, calculating new lines of profit. And in the Red Waste, a young Khaleesi felt her unborn child shift within and dreamt of wings beating against her ribs. Viserys spent his days feeding the hatchling strips of singed lamb, letting it soak in braziers of smoldering charcoal. He named the little dragon Vigarian, after the ancient she-dragon who had once borne Queen Visenya across the battlefield. The choice pleased him, Visenya, Viserys, names twinned in echo. At night he pored over ledgers, provisions for 8,000 infantry, contracts for siege engineers from Tyrosh, letters of marque to Lycene corsairs. Yet for all his ambition, coffers drained faster than they filled. Dragons devoured not only meat but gold. The gray dragon banner spread, but many sellswords loved coin more than glory. Viserys summoned Mormont to the solar overlooking Qohor's silent canal. "We must move," he said, voice thin with fatigue. "Before winter drains the purse, Westeros will supply what we lack. The Golden Company of Dragons will cross the narrow sea before the moon turns thrice." Mormont hesitated. "To sail the disputed lands we need galleys and captains brave, or desperate, enough to ferry a young dragon. The free cities will threaten seizure." Viserys stroked Vagarion's scaly neck. "Threats shrivel in the sight of fire. Secure the ships." "Aye!" A sudden cry rose from the courtyard. Steel rang. Viserys and the knight rushed to the balcony. Below, a column of mailed soldiers in Lannister crimson forced the gate, dust swirling around the Golden Lion's standard. At their head rode Ser Kevan Lannister, pale gaze hawk-like beneath a gilded helm. Viserys cursed. The lions sniffed blood too quickly. Mormont drew his blade. "They come for the egg. And my head." Viserys lifted Vagaryon from his shoulder. The hatchling hissed at the distant clamor. "Ready the men. We forge our baptism in lion's blood." The Golden Company's ranks formed in the yard. Qohoric onlookers crowded rooftops, wagering in hushed voices. Viserys descended the stair with a cold steadiness he scarcely recognized. The molten shard at his brow throbbed, echoing the drumroll of his heart. As Lannister spearmen fanned out, Kevan called up, "Yield, Prince, and the king may yet grant the wall instead of a grave." Viserys laughed, a bright, ringing peal that startled even himself. "I offer you a kinder mercy. Bend the knee, and I will teach your grandsons to ride dragons." He lifted his arm. Vagaryon spread wings, talons digging into his vambrace. The hatchling shrieked. Flame erupted, searing white, pure as dawn. The front rank of Lannister shields bloomed with fire, their lion sigils melting into rivulets of gold that dripped onto blistering flesh. Screams split the morning. Viserys drew his sword. "Forward!" he cried, voice carrying above the roar. "For fire and blood." Steel crashed, men died, and the future kindled in dragon breath. Somewhere beneath that thunder, Viserys felt the second egg flutter within its crate, as though hungry to share the sky that morning. They won the yard but not the city. Kevan fell, throat an open red smile. Yet as flames guttered on the blackened stones, Viserys saw torches bobbing along the canal. More Lannister vessels hemmed the wharves, crimson sails blotting the river mouth. Qohoric magistrates sealed the gates, trembling before the wrath of House Lannister and the rumor of a prince who burned men alive. Viserys convened his captains at dusk. "We break south tonight," he ordered, stabbing a dagger into the map where the Rhoyne bent east. "Through the forest to Selhurys, then to Volantis. The old empire hungers for rebellion. They will trade coin for dragons. And ships." Mormont frowned. 200 leagues of swamp and guerrilla archers loyal to no one. "Then we march like shadows," Viserys answered, "and leave only cinders." He touched the green egg now, feeling its increasing warmth. 2 dragons would be better than 1. 3 would be unstoppable. The exodus began under a moon swallowed by cloud. Torches were forbidden. Men moved by star and memory, each step silent, each word a whisper. Mother Vera guided them through a postern gate, eyes huge with fear and awe. She pressed a leather pouch of silver into Viserys' palm. "For the prince who bleeds fire," she murmured. He kissed her knuckles. "When I wear a crown, any son of yours may call himself Blood of Dragons." Outside, the pines breathed pitch-black scent. Snowflakes drizzled, melting on Vagarion's scales. The hatchling shivered beneath Viserys' cloak. He stroked its narrow spine, whispering soft Valyrian lullabies. Snow in autumn, he thought. A sign. Winter gathers its teeth. Summer flames must be sharp. He did not look back at Qohor's silhouette, burnished towers, stained with the embers of his brief reign. A king looking backward loses the horizon. Ahead waited rivers, wars, and cities of blood-red brick that would burn under dragons' wings. Ahead waited Daenerys, pregnant with stallion and prophecy. Ahead, always ahead, the Iron Throne glimmered like molten gold cooled into a crown. Viserys flexed his fingers around the reins. The scar across his temple pulsed, a star born of Drogo's failed execution. The Dothraki thought gold made a better crown when poured. They had been wrong. The only true crown was forged in fire, and worn by a man who could walk through it unscorched. So he rode through snowfall and shadow, dragon cradled against his heart, dreaming of cities aflame. And the night swallowed him not as prey but as promise. They rode at sunset, when the sky bled vermilion behind the black pines and the wind smelled of iron. 8,000 men slipped from Qohor like smoke, brazen shield pikemen, Lysine crossbowmen in indigo sashes, Tyroshi skirmishers whose forked beards dripped with green dye, and the free riders of the disputed lands who had already painted gray dragons on their round elk-hide bucklers. Above them wheeled a single shape. Vegarian, scarcely larger than a mastiff yet savage in the air, banking on newborn wings that shone metallic under the cold moon. Viserys kept the hatchling tethered by hunger alone. He carried a raw haunch of goat slung from his saddle, and whenever the dragon's shadow passed overhead, he twitched the meat so the beast would stoop and snatch, talons raking, before spiraling aloft again. A fragile discipline, yet better than chains. Dragons were not forged in iron but in fire and mastery of fear, and the Silver Prince meant to be the only thing his fledgling feared. The march cut south through the gloaming woodland Qohoric called the Crooked Teeth, a maze of ridges and tarns older than the first men. Mormont set scouts ahead. Corinthos the Myrish archer, lithe as willow, with eyes that seemed to drink starlight. 3 orphans of the green blood who could tread mud without ripples, and a shag-haired summer islander named Choba who possessed a laugh like breaking slate and claimed he could smell steel the way hounds scented fox. They ghosted among moss-cloaked boulders, pruning snares, mapping gullies, returning each dawn with news whispered in Valyrian cipher. For 3 nights the forest held its breath. Then came snow. It drifted from a cloudless sky, fat, slow flakes that settled on the soldiers' braids and lingered, refusing to melt though the air itself still tasted of autumn. The men took it for ill omen. Viserys took it for opportunity. Let the lions of Casterly Rock chase him into winter's jaws. He would leave them gnawing frost-bitten bones while he stoked his hearth with dragon fire. But snow muffles footfalls, and muffled footfalls breed ambush. Just before the 4th dawn, Corinthos appeared beside Mormont's pavilion, face grave. "The Grey Dogs," he said, naming a band of Sellsword deserters infamous for raiding pilgrims along the Qohoric road. 200 riders, perhaps more. They wait by the Tarn of 10 Shadows. Their captain, Old Valdo, wishes to claim your head for the bounty Ser Cersei promises. Viserys poured simmering mulled wine onto the ground, steam curling. "Bounties," he said, "are minted for fools who mistake gold for crowns. We shall pay him in kind." He summoned Miles the Tawny and the Brazen Shields, ordering them to fashion planks of greenwood and soak them in bee-pitch looted from the apiarist's sheds. Archers wrapped arrowheads in oily linen. When the army crested the ridge overlooking the Tarn, a mirror of black glass reflecting naked birch limbs, the Grey Dogs stirred from their pits, howling oaths. But Vegarian screeched above, and his flame kissed the pitch planks hurled by brazen shields so that they shattered on the wind, raining sparks onto the Tarn. The surface bloomed with fire, a lake of writhing orange serpents. Reflections of birches burned upside down. Horses reared. Men screamed. Some leapt into what they imagined cool water, only to thrash in boiled darkness. Old Valdo's banner, a snarling mastiff stitched in rusted mail, wilted as the pole burned to cinders. When silence fell, only steam rose from the Tarn, drifting between charred birches like the ghosts of trees. Viserys dismounted and knelt at the water's edge, cupping a scorched handful. It steamed in his palm as he offered it to Valyrian. The dragon lapped once, twice, and an echo of flame danced behind its golden eyes. That, Viserys declared to the hushed ranks, is the price of a prince's head. If the West sends lions, we will feed them to our ghosts. The soldiers roared, half in fear, half in worship. They reached Selhurys 14 days later beneath a sky hung with a tattered curtain of ash-gray cloud. The Rhoyne bent wide around the river port, its waters bloated with snowmelt and the refuse of 100 ferries. Selhurys was no shining jewel, mud-brick houses sagged behind moldy log palisades. But its docks teemed with grain barges bound for Volantis, and atop every stack of cracked amphorae sat merchants eager for coin. Coin Viserys had in dwindling supply. Fear he dealt cheaply. He tethered Valyrian to the signpost outside the Old Lotus Tavern, where the scent of roasting beans drew half the town. When the crowd gathered to gape at the dragon gnawing a goat carcass, Miles the Tawny marched up the wharf and proclaimed, "Witness the dawn of the black sails. Our prince hires boats and brave men. Refuse, and he hires only boats." On cue, Valyrian loosed a gout of flame that set the signpost blazing. The tavern keeper signed the charter first. Before nightfall, a flotilla of river skiffs and wide-bellied grain barges, newly christened the Dragon Fleet in paint still dripping, waited beneath fluttering gray banners. Viserys stood at the prow of the lead barge, the blue-black egg cradled in velvet at his feet, emerald egg wrapped in wolf fur beside it. A chill wind scoured the deck, and he pulled his cloak tight, feeling the heat trapped beneath the eggs. They pulsed stronger each dusk, as though attuned to the heartbeat of Valyrian overhead. Mormont joined him. "Volantis lies 10 days downriver," the knight said, "but spies linger on every quay. The Triarchs will know your face before the tide turns." He studied the younger man's profile, the way firelight from braziers limned the gold fragment at Viserys' brow. "Some will court you, more will fear you. Fear bends knees," Viserys murmured, stroking the blue shell. "But desire moves empires. Volantis remembers dragons in its sky. I will show them memory made flesh." He lifted the egg, feeling its warmth spread through his arms and pour into ribs still shivering from the Rhoyne wind. He closed his eyes and dreamed of the black walls of old Volantis bowed beneath the scream of hatchlings. 3 nights out from Selhurys, the fleet moored at a deserted spit where willows trailed roots into the water like drowned gray hair. Scouts reported cinnamon bears prowling upriver, drawn by the strings of salted carp hung from the barges. Viserys dismissed the warning. Bears feared fire, he said, and he had a dragon. He pitched a lone pavilion on a wooded knoll apart from the men, where the ground rose above the river mist. Within he built 3 braziers, iron baskets on clawed feet, fed with cedar chips and lamp oil until coals glowed white. Then he dismissed his guardsmows and knelt between the fires, blue egg before him, emerald egg to one side, Valyrian coiled around his shoulders. The dragon's body was cold this night, as if hoarding heat for unseen labors. He drew a silver dagger, its pommel a snarling wyvern. With a hissed word, he slit his left palm. Blood welled in the glow, thick and bright as garnet. He let it spill upon the blue shell, chanting the high Valyrian that Illyrio's scrolls said first princes of old Valyria spoke when calling scale sisters from stone. He spoke until his throat rasped raw, until the wound on his palm glistened dry, until his vision swam with ribbons of red and gold that were not flame. The egg remained still. Frustration pricked him deeper than the dagger. He rose, staggering. Valyrian lifted his head, sensing turmoil, and chirruped inquisitively. Viserys shoved the hatchling hard. It tumbled with a wounded screech, wings flailing. "Useless lizard," he spat, voice ragged. "You burn on command but cannot wake your kin?" The dragon hissed, spreading its wings. Fire sparked in its throat, a tremor of cobalt. Viserys felt the heat and in anger snatched a brazier with both hands, hurling it at the blue egg. The iron basket struck the shell, spilling molten coals across the velvet. A roar of wind and flame filled the pavilion. The cedar chips exploded in a gout of turquoise fire that whirled like a living tempest. Viserys threw up his arms, but the fire curved around him, licking his sleeves without consuming them, curling along his hair like a lover's hand. He felt nothing, save a surge of every heartbeat he had ever missed. The blue egg cracked, shards lifting as if on invisible strings. Between them, unfurled wings glistening midnight indigo. A hatchling writhed free, larger than Vigarian had been at birth. Scales edged with silver so fine they shimmered glassy in torch gleam. Its eyes were violet, his own, flecked with comet streaks of red. The creature hissed. The sound carried knowledge older than old Valyria. Vigarian answered from the shadows, crouching low, wings mantled in submission. Viserys sank to his knees, dizzy from blood loss and revelation. The new dragon crawled onto his lap, its talons razor delicate. It nuzzled his wounded palm, tongue flicking over the cut. Flesh knit beneath the touch until not even a scar remained. "Stormfire," Viserys whispered, voice trembling. "You are Stormfire." The hatchling blinked once, slow and grave, as though acknowledging the name that would echo down centuries, or extinguish within months, depending on a prince's gamble. Outside, horns blasted. Men shouted. The ground thudded with hooves. Mormont burst through the pavilion flap, sword slick with blood. "Bears?" Viserys asked distantly. "Not bears," the knight panted. "Black goat blades. Cohoric fanatics sent to claim your head for sacrilege. 200 at least. They have the eastern bank." Viserys rose, both dragons clinging to him. "Then we show them a truer god." He strode from the pavilion, Stormfire on one shoulder, Vigarian on the other, braziers toppling behind him. Night air slapped his face. The scent of blood mingled with river mist. Torches bobbed along the reed-choked shore opposite. Rank upon rank of fanatics clad in ebon-lacquered mail, helms crowned with goat horns curving like twin scythes. Their high priest, robed in flayed human skin bleached white, raised a crescent staff and shrieked words lost to distance but heavy with murderous zeal. Viserys walked to the prow of his barge, feet bare on wet oak. Soldiers saw the flicker of blue wings, the silver flash of gold eyes, and fell back in awe. He lifted both hands skyward. Dragons climbed him like living mantles, perched on his forearms, wings extended. "Blood of my blood," he called, voice arching across water. "Behold the children of the wind. They hunger." He did not command them. He let them be. Two streaks, one silver blue, one pewter gray, tore the darkness. They crossed midair, twisting like duelists, then dove. Fire lit the world. Twin rivers, one cobalt, one white-hot. The goat-helmed ranks erupted in screams. Shields melted. Bone horns flashed white, then sagged. The river hissed as bodies plunged, flailing embers snuffed by black water. Within heartbeats, the far bank shone like smelted glass flecked with charred silhouettes. When silence came, only crackling reeds and the groan of timber filled it. The dragons circled back, slowing, sides heaving with exertion. They alit on Viserys' shoulders. He stroked their steaming necks, heedless of blisters forming on his palms. From the trembling ranks behind him a chant rose, "Dragon King, Dragon King, Dragon King." It rolled like thunder, impossible to silence. Viserys closed his eyes and let it soak his bones. When he looked again, Ser Jorah knelt, sword planted in river mud, head bowed. Miles the tawny followed, and the brazen shields, and even the skirmishers of Lys who had once scoffed at fossil eggs. Yet victory tasted of ash. Viserys felt the humming heat of the emerald egg still uncracked, lying forgotten in fur. 2 dragons were godlike. 3 would be destiny. But each birth drained something unseen from him. Sleep, blood, tenderness. Every time a shell broke, he sensed a thread inside him unraveling, as if the dragons grew on what he surrendered. He shook off unease. Destiny required sacrifice, and if something inside him hollowed, the crown would fill it. At Volantis, the black walls loomed. For 100 feet of fused basalt, ringed by statues of tigers and elephants, the two rival parties that ruled the city. Inside, streets swarmed with slaves whose cheeks bore tattoos of their trade. Blue tears for bed slaves, green chains for long-suffering scribes, crimson flame for fire dancers. Above it all rose the temple of the Lord of Light, its great red windows blazing with eternal fire. Viserys made his entrance through the Elephant Gate at midday beneath a canopy of ash wood hung with dragon banners. Stormfire clung to his left arm, Valyrian to his right. Their wings formed a living sigil. Trumpets blared. The masses surged forward, some in terror, some in worship, most with the numb ignorance of those who have borne chains too long to hope for change. Triarch Talassos Nimeros Vassar, the eldest elephant, met Viserys in the shadow of the black walls. Talassos's beard was oiled into 10 braids tipped with rubies. His robes shimmered with woven locust wings. He bowed low, palms outspread. "Prince of Dragons," he said in accented Valyrian. "Volantis welcomes the flame that purifies." Viserys inclined his head. "Flame purifies but also consumes. Which shall it do here depends on how Volantis greets the winds of change." A careful smile flickered on the Triarch's lips. "Come. The tigers join us at the Hall of 1,000 Lanterns to feast and bargain." Inside the hall, tables of ebony 9 yards long groaned beneath roast boar stuffed with fig and lark, pyramids of honeyed lotus, casks of summer wine older than the doom. It was excess meant to impress a young prince. Viserys tasted none of it. He spoke numbers. Ships, masts, oars, purses, grain warehouses on the gift of orange, armorers' contracts from new guys. He knew the coin tongue of Volantis. It was Illyrio's gift, more lethal than steel. Triarch Talassos bargained in circles. Triarch Malaco Rogaire of the Tigers threatened, cajoling in turn, promising a private menagerie for each dragon if only Viserys would stay to parade before the masses as wings of the new alliance. The Silver Prince listened, unsmiling. At last he rose, silk cloak whispering like snake scales. "My dragons are no ornaments. They fly east to Westeros. Whoever fuels their flight reaps flame-forged fortune. Whoever hinders," he gestured toward Stormfire, who hissed, sparks raining onto Malaco's perfumed sleeves, "feeds a hungrier fire." The room fell to hushed stillness broken only by crackles from braziers. Then Talassos laughed, spreading jeweled hands. "Volantis invests in certainty, not promise." Viserys moved to the nearest brazier, dipped his finger into the oil, sizzled. Without flinching, he traced a line of blazing liquid across the black marble floor, a glowing arc between his boots and the Triarch's. Stormfire flicked his tongue at the scent of oil. Valyrian flexed talons. Viserys whispered in High Valyrian. 2 jets of flame javelined from dragon maws. They met where the oil traced, coursed along it, exploding in a curtain of light that separated Prince from Triarchs with a wall of dancing hellfire. Talassos stumbled backward, beard braids singed. Malaco shrieked as fur cuffs smoked. Viserys stepped through the fire unburnt, embers swirling around him like fireflies. "Certainty," he said, voice soft yet edged in doom, "is a prince who walks through flame. Promise is whether you walk beside him." He gestured to the unlit oil at the far edge, forming half a circle. "Or stand where the arc closes." Talassos fell to one knee. "Volantis will provide 30 war galleys, 10 grain hulks, and 100,000 gold honors, half now, half on safe landing in Westeros." Malaco hesitated until flames licked his boots. He knelt beside the elephant. Viserys nodded once. "Certainty," he repeated, and turned away so they would not see his lingering tremor. The blaze had warmed but not burned. Yet each time he called fire, a faint echo of pain gnawed behind his eyes, as though dragons borrowed sparks from the forge of his very soul. He ignored it, already drafting invasion routes across the narrow sea in his mind. Illyrio Mopatus arrived on the 3rd day of accord, borne in a sedan chair carried by 8 eunuchs whose shoulders sagged under his girth. He waddled into Viserys' new apartments. High atop the broken obelisk, a tower long abandoned to spider priests, fanning himself with a peacock plume. "My sweet prince," Illyrio cooed, noting the dragon sprawled before a hearth of weirwood logs. "You have hatched wonders and upset balances." His eyes darted to the emerald egg glowing faintly in fur. "And yet one promise remains unbroken." Viserys poured dark arbor wine. "That promise burns soon." Illyrio's painted brows rose. "Not before you parley with Daenerys. Her Khalasar dwindles in the red waste. The Horse Lord lies dying of an infected wound. The Khaleesi bears child still." Viserys' tongue clucked. "Then she shall see my sails crest the Jade Sea. She will bring me her warriors or kneel." Illyrio sighed. "Daenerys is the mother of dragons in the prophecies of Qarth. The priests of Lazer speak of a bleeding star and a golden dragon reborn from ash. Some believe she is Azor Ahai come again." "Priests?" Viserys scoffed, though a flicker of unease touched him. "I am dragon made flesh. I need no prophecy." Illyrio leaned close, amber eyes gleaming. "Prophecy needs you. Combine your banners. Let her child ride your stormfire one day, and the realm cannot but bend." He touched the emerald egg. "And if 3 rise, let them each have a rider, the prince, the princess, and the son who was promised. Legends eat crowns for breakfast, but dynasties dine on them at dusk." Viserys considered. A child astride a dragon? The image galled. The throne promised to him born one day by another. Yet alliance with Daenerys meant fresh armies, and her claim might mollify Westerosi smallfolk who had admired the Silver Queen at Drogo's side. Besides, with 3 dragons he need never fear treachery from his sister. Fear and love were but 2 talons of the same claw. He nodded slowly. "When the 3rd hatches, we fly east. I will speak with my sister." Illyrio's smile curdled sweet as custard left in sun. "Glory to House Targaryen reborn." That night Viserys dreamed of wildfire seas. He stood on a beach of green flame, waves crashing in luminous spray, and in the distance loomed the Red Keep, its towers ablaze, molten stone dripping like tears. Upon the tallest parapet he saw the Iron Throne, but not empty. A pale figure sat wreathed in shadow, crown half melted, eyes burning violet. He strode toward it, but each step drove him deeper into knee-high flame and smoke until he choked. When he looked again, the figure was him. Yet older, gaunt, lips cracked, dragons circling overhead like vultures. He awoke gasping, sheets soaked through. Stormfire lay curled at his feet, but Vigarion perched upon the window ledge, staring into the obsidian sky. The emerald egg throbbed with light as if lit from within by the remnant of his dream. Viserys rose, crossed the chamber. He pressed his palm to the shell. It pulsed once, warm and steady, and sudden calm washed through him. "Fear is the egg's cradle." A voice seemed to whisper, "Feed it fire, but cradle it with fear." He withdrew, unsettled. Dawn was hours off, yet he knew sleep would not return. He dressed, belted a dagger, and descended the tower. Volantis by night simmered. Silk-veiled pleasure barges glided along the canal, their red lanterns casting liver-colored ripples. Slavers shuffled lines of fettered men toward auction squares lit by smokeless purple torches. Red priests chanted from balconies, their hymns echoing across tile roofs like distant drums of war. Viserys walked hooded, though anyone who glimpsed the gold shard at his brow half hidden by hair would guess him. None approached. At the bridge of the long sunset he paused. Beneath its stone arches flowed the blackwater rush of Essos. Rumors, blood, secrets. Shadows stirred beside a pillar. A woman stepped forward, tall, flame-haired, cloaked in scarlet. Twin rubies burned at her throat. "King who would be," she intoned softly, Valyrian poured like wine. "Shadow fights light in your soul. One must shatter ere dawn." Viserys' hand drifted to dagger. "Who are you, priestess?" "Melisandre of Ashai." Her eyes glowed a deeper red than rubies, like embers starved of air. "I have followed whispers of your dragons since they cracked St. 1. Lawler sent dreams of gray wings beating, of blue fire scorching false idols. "And what does your Lord of Light demand?" Viserys asked. "Not demand, offer. Fire is the language of gods, yet mortals stutter. I can teach you to speak." but gifts require shadows. She raised a hand. Candle flames seemed to swirl within her palm. 3 heads has the dragon. 1 is crowned in gold and pain. 1 is crowned in silver and sorrow. 1 is crowned in blood and love. Night gathers. Only 1 crown may shine. Viserys felt cold though fire danced inches away. Prophecies and riddles. I have steel and dragons. I need no shadow puppet priest. Melisandre's smile never warmed her eyes. When the Jade Sea turns to glass and the lion roars in fire, remember Melisandre offered truth. Then seek the shadows. She stepped back. Smoke curled. When wind cleared, she was gone, leaving only the hiss of river water beneath the arch. Viserys returned to the obelisk unsettled. He found Stormfire restless, wings twitching, eyes fixed on the emerald egg that now glowed brighter than banked coals. The 3rd would hatch soon, he felt it in marrow. But the priestess's words gnawed. 1 crown may shine. Which? His sister's? A child's? He banished doubt. The Iron Throne had razors forged into its seat, meant to cut any king who grew complacent. Doubt was blood given to steel. He would not bleed before he sat. Preparations for departure consumed days. Volantene shipwrights refitted galleys to carry dragons. Broad oak perches reinforced with iron, hatch-woven nets of silk to snag a wing without breaking bone, barrel hoops of lamb fat to singe for feeding. The army drilled in phalanx by the old fish market. Ash pikes braced, shields locked, their new name booming in cadence. Golden Company of Dragons. Money poured from Talassos's vaults. More poured in from households who saw profit in betting on dragons before they crossed seas. Viserys minted coins bearing his profile. A young king crowned in flame, dragons for eyes. He paid his men with them first, to spread faith by silver. On the eve of sailing, a storm hammered Volantis so fiercely that palisades bent like straw. Lightning cracked the sky in green forks, wildfire flashes that blinded soldiers on watch. Viserys stood atop the broken obelisk battlements, cloak whipping, dragons shrieking against the gale. Rain lashed but hissed to steam upon their scales. Far below, the black walls thrummed with drums as slaves sang prayers to every god from Rhoynar to Lawler. The emerald egg throbbed in his arms, hot as forge iron. He descended to the roof garden where a single black marble statue of a Valyrian sphinx crouched. At its base burned a ceremonial brazier filled with obsidian shards. He set the egg within. Rain sizzled away before touching the shell. He cut his arm again, deeper this time, and smeared blood over green scales. Thunder boomed. No fissure appeared. He seized a shard of obsidian, drove it into his own flesh above the heart. Blood spattered across egg and statue both. He felt darkness tug at his vision but clung to consciousness. The egg pulsed once, twice. Stormfire screeched from the parapet. Vegarian beat wings. A sound like ribs cracking within stone echoed. Green light poured through spiderweb fractures. The shell burst outward in a spray of molten emerald. Flames whooshed skyward into the storm, coiling with lightning so that bolts curved around the tower like serpents devouring their tails. Out of the explosion glided a creature twice the size of its siblings at birth. Scales shimmered gold-green, each edged crimson. Its wings unfurled vast enough to shadow both lesser dragons. Eyes were pits of black shot through with coruscating ribbons of red. It landed before Viserys and pressed its snout against his bleeding chest. The wound sealed, leaving only a faint dragon-shaped scar over his heart. Viserys whispered through rain and tears, "Mare axes, my wrath." The 3 dragons faced the storm, wings outstretched, triangle of living flame. Lightning leapt from cloud to wingtip, arcing from Stormfire to Meraxes to Vegarian, a circuit of primordial power. Viserys felt every bolt pass through him, threads of light sewing flesh to prophecy. Somewhere beyond the wall of rain, church bells collapsed under the heat of stray flame. The storm raged all night. By dawn half the wharves lay ashes, but none dared blame the Dragon King. Those who survived whispered that the storm itself knelt. At sunrise, Viserys strode to the galley silver dawn wearing black scale mail enameled green, dragons swirling across his breast. Vigarian perched on the mizzenmast, Stormfire on the forecastle. Mare-axes coiled each rail like a jeweled serpent. The Triarchs watched from ramshackle barges, faces pale with awe and fear. Viserys lifted his sword. A slim Valyrian blade delivered in secret from a Pentoshi noble who claimed descent from disputed Blackfire blood. Its rippled steel drank the first rays of sun. "Sails to horizon," he commanded. "We voyage to destiny." Oars plunged. Drums boomed. The fleet slid from Volantis like an arrow from a burning bowstring, masts swarming with gray pennants. Behind, the city smoldered under storm-torn skies, its streets echoing with new prayer. Valyrio Mazzi's Boza, the dragon comes. Viserys stood at the prow, wind flaying hair from his brow, 3 dragons shrieking above. He felt empty and limitless, a vessel poured full of flame. Every bolt of lightning still hummed in his veins. Each beat of dragon wings drummed in his ribs. Ahead, across leagues of widening sea, lay Slaver's Bay, Karth, the Red Waste, and beyond all of them the jagged shadow of Dragonstone beckoning like a memory of home he had never seen. "One crown may shine," Melisandre had said, but 3 dragons blazed now at his command. In their reflection on the water, he saw not crowns but halos of living fire. And so the fleet pressed on, leaving trails of steam where dragonfire skimmed gray waves, toward sister, toward throne, toward an ending written only in ash and blood. Whether it would be his ashes or the world's, he no longer cared. All that mattered was the blaze, and in that blaze he would stand unburnt until the last echo of his name clanged through the cracked bells of King's Landing. After all, what is a crown to a man who wears the storm? Salt wind pressed into Viserys' lungs like the breath of some invisible leviathan. The silver dawn dipped through sullen swells the color of hammered tin, its banks rising and falling in perfect, metronomic cadence. Each thump of the drum echoed across the flotilla, steady as a single great heartbeat. And in that heartbeat the prince felt an undercurrent of destiny humming like drawn steel. The 3 dragons rode the wind in shifting spirals above the masts. Vigarian darted ahead, prowling the sea lanes with restless energy. Stormfire coursed in regal loops around the flagship's pennant. Mare-axes drifted highest of all, wings spread wide to sip invisible updrafts, a silent green-gold constellation against the pewter sky. Every so often, tiny tongues of flame drooled from the oldest hatchling's maw, as though the creature tested whether air itself might burn. Below, sailors muttered half-prayers, half-boasts. "No storm will find us while dragons watch," some whispered. Others touched talismans and counted knots until landfall. They had no word for the scale of thing unfolding across these waters. A tale was being writ, but the ink was living fire, and those 2 near the quill might vanish before they understood the letters. Viserys kept mostly to the quarterdeck, studying charts with Mormont and the Volantene helmsman. Each night he unrolled fresh vellum and marked their progress. First east by southeast along the Rhoynar trade current, then past the green beacon of Black Cliffs, then southward into the great belly of the Summer Sea. The fleet would skirt the Basilisk Isles, pirate-ridden reefs where fever and broken oaths made brothers, then swing northeast toward the Red Waste, where scouts swore Daenerys' weakened Khalasar now wandered. 3 times a day he summoned the dragons, each feeding in ritual order. Raw goat for Vigarian, half-seared lamb for Stormfire, lest the blue one devour its own heat too quickly. Chunks of salted pork soaked in spiced wine for Mare-axes, whose fast growth demanded fiercer fare. The creatures fed from iron cradles atop the forecastle, a theater of crackling blood steam and snapping bone that transfixed the rowing men. Viserys wanted it so. Fear, yes, but hunger too. Let them taste the promise of conquest in each gout of dragonfire. Yet every feeding left him hollow. He could feel some unseen thread winding tighter inside his ribcage, like gut-strung wire on a crossbow. The dragon's eyes followed him at all hours, luminous in moonlight, ember-red by day. Stormfire most of all seemed to hear his pulse, tilting its head when he faltered in step, the way wolves listen for a stag's stumble. He slept little. When sleep found him, it brought dreams stitched from ash and laughter. The red keep melting, Daenerys cradling a stillborn colt whose mane spat sparks, Illyrio's fat hands pulling puppet strings of living sinew. In one dream, he stood beneath a weeping weirwood whose leaves burned like torches, and behind him stepped the fiery priestess Melisandre, whispering that kings were candles, brightest at the instant they guttered. He woke each time with a gasp, clutching the scar above his heart where the emerald dragon's hatching had sealed his flesh. The skin there felt warm, as if embers slept beneath. On the 12th day out from Volantis, the horizon blossomed with sails. At first they seemed no larger than gull wings, pallid against a hazed dawn. But as the sun climbed, crimson paint and black stripe patterns resolved. Corsair outrunners of the Basilisk Brotherhood, fast lateen-rigged raiders famed for chain shot and poison arrows. They sent ransom, Ser Jorah growled, scanning the lines through a tarnished brazen scope. Or they've heard the Lannister bounty doubled. Either way, they'll test us. Viserys watched 3 swift galleys veer ahead of the Corsair swarm, triangular sails full-bellied. He studied how they tacked across the prevailing wind, reckless, efficient, closing distance like wolves fanning a stag. "Signal the fleet to Titan," he ordered. "Archers to the rails, but keep the dragons leashed." Mormont's brow knitted. "You mean to spare them? To bait them?" Viserys turned, cloak snapping. "Corsair's chase legend. Show them sheep first. Then show them shepherds with teeth." The Golden Company's hulls huddled together, or banks slowing. From half-shield nests, brazen shield crossbowmen trained quarrels on the closing raiders but did not fire. Sailors cursed, fists white on lines as the Corsairs drew within screaming distance. Grapnel ropes whirled overhead. Filthy banners depicting broken crowns and hanged kings whipped in the salty wind. A barbed chain shot shrieked from the enemy prow, scything through the gunwale of a grain hulk. Splinters and cries followed. Another chain, another eruption of wood. Yet still Viserys held his hand. The Corsairs howled triumph, springing to leap. Only then did he lift 2 fingers. High above, 3 shadows pivoted. Wings folded. The sea groaned as if some colossal net dropped across it. Vigarion struck first, diving through the rigging of the lead raider. Fire jetted in a perfect, razor-edged lance, cutting sailcloth and flesh in one white instant. The mast sheared clean. Stormfire streaked behind, exhaling a broad cone of cobalt flame that ignited tar-soaked deck planks. Men became torches running to the rail. Some leaped, vanishing in steam as water quenched flesh slower than fear desired. Mare axes descended last, not spouting flame but slamming talons through the aft castle, lifting 2 screaming Corsairs skyward before dropping them like stones. Their bodies struck with such force that deck timbers rattled, and those still living stumbled, doomed. The other pirate galleys tried to will hard at port, but momentum and awe tangled their helms. One clipped the burning hulk, both masts entangled in rigging. Fire leaped ship to ship with cheerful haste. Chain-shot crews fled to longboats, but arrows rained from Golden Company rails, felling them like gulls. Viserys watched until flame chewed the last Corsair flag to curling ash. Then he nodded to Ser Jorah. "Signal the men to salvage what coin floats, and toss wine casks to the surviving pirates. Let them sing of dragons and mercy. They'll spread the tale faster than corpses." That night the fleet anchored near a low atoll veined with phosphorescent tide pools. Bonfires dotted the beaches. Soldiers toasted the dragon's day, swearing no king since Aegon the Conqueror had unleashed such wrath on the open sea. Viserys allowed the revel, though he drank only watered wine. The victory tasted of salt and metal, necessary, but not yet sweet. He walked the moonlit strand alone until he reached a tide pool glowing pale green. Its light reminded him of wildfire, though calmer, like ghosts content with drowning. Reflected there, he saw himself ringed by 3 dragons perched on black volcanic stone, their flame-tipped reflections quivering. 3 heads, he murmured, but 1 mind. The emerald hatchling, mare axes, cocked its head, nostrils flaring as if scenting the doubt behind his words. For an instant Viserys saw not beast but mirror. Ambition made scale and bone, gazing back to weigh whether the flesh it served remained worthy. He knelt, letting icy water lap his greaves. "I will be worthy," he swore in high Valyrian. "I will burn the clouds if they dare shade my throne." A distant horn answered, ship's watch noting some midnight sail. Yet to Viserys it sounded like the laugh of gods who wagered matches might outlive moths they lit. At dawn, pale red dune line crept above the eastern horizon, the ragged fringe of the red waste. Wind carried dust that scoured exposed skin raw. The fleet could not beach on that shore. Shoals clawed keels like a butcher's rake. Instead, the galleys anchored 3 leagues south of the gulch, where scouts claimed to have sighted stragglers of a shattered Khalasar. Mormont gathered 200 mounted sellswards, the best cohoric destriers lowered by sling. The beasts snorted, eyes rolling at the scent of dragon scales. Viserys rode at the column's point on a mottled sandrunner mare whose coat near matched the dunes. Vegarians circled above like a tame shadow. Stormfire and mare axes he left aboard, iron chains fix-clamped to the mast perch. Winds inland swirled unpredictably, and he could ill afford a mishap before parley. Even so, dunes whispered with heat mirage. Sometimes he thought he glimpsed Stormfire's sapphire blaze dancing on air miles distant, though it must have been sun dazzle. They found the Khalasar by smell before sight. Rot, horse dung, sickness. Flies clouded above tattered hides strung across crooked poles. Less than 100 souls remained, half of them children, ribs sharp as broken bows. Ragged afterguards raised spears when dust plume appeared, but hope faltered once they saw disciplined ranks of Sellsword infantry marching neat behind horsemen. Courage drained from cracked lips. At the camp center stood Daenerys. Her silver-gold braid lay unwashed on shoulders browned by relentless sun, yet she held herself with a queen's erect misery. In her arms a newborn swaddled in scarlet horsehair, no bigger than a loaf. The babe's eyes, when they opened, flickered violet like candleshake. Viserys dismounted, boots sinking in red sand. For a heartbeat, brother and sister stared, history scouring between them. "You were dead?" Daenerys said. No greeting, no blame, only bewilderment. "Death forgot my name," Viserys answered. "It will remember yours if you linger here." Her gaze slid to Vegarian gliding overhead. She remembered dragon eggs. He knew. She had cherished them like lost ancestors. At seeing flesh where stone had been, tears welled. Of joy or grief or both. She rocked the infant. "This is Rhaego," she murmured. "He came too early. Blood of my blood. But he..." Her voice broke. The child mewled listlessly. Viserys studied the tiny face mottled pale, mouth parched. There was heat in those eyes, but weak, as if a candle fought desert noon. "You carry embers," he said, "but embers fade without tinder." He motioned forward a rider bearing a skin of sweetwater and a satchel of dried figs. "We supply your Khalasar. In return you ride under my banner." Mormont stiffened, expecting resistance, but Daenerys only closed her eyes, breathing once. When she opened them again, something flint-sharp had settled. "My riders are broken," she said. "Yet if dragons truly heed you, sister's blood might shield brother's army. But know this, the fire of my womb will not be bartered like chattel. Rhaego is my heart. If he fails, I will set this world aflame." Viserys stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If he fails, sister, my dragons will be his wings reborn. We share blood. Our fates entwine like threads in Valyrian steel." Her stare measured him. The gold shard scar, the half-healed scabs mapping arm veins, the quiet mania in pupils chasing storms. She exhaled. "So be it," Daenerys said. "But know also, I name my son Dragonlord even in cradle. He will ride, and I will ride beside him." Viserys inclined his head, a gesture part brotherly, part kingly. "When the time comes, the skies will find room." That night the dunes blazed with cookfires. Goat and horse meat simmered with rare dates the Volantines had tucked among supply crates. Water flowed in cautious ration, yet more than these people had known in moons. Viserys walked among them, Meraxes perched upon a gaunt boy's shoulder, wings shading the skull like a jeweled helmet. Children laughed for the first time since fathers fell on cracked earth. Hope, Viserys noted, was the cheapest tribute coin. He found Daenerys near a fire pit where Mormont spooned broth to a fevered rider. She nursed Rhaego, eyes distant. "He weakens," she whispered as Viserys knelt. "Even mother's milk fails. The Magi I once trusted would offer cures for price of blood, but they are ash or fled." Viserys touched the babe's brow. "Hot, too hot. Dragon heat or infection. Let us try other milk," he said. He whistled softly. Vigarian swooped to land behind, wings stirring sparks. The dragon folded them, then peered at the infant with quizzical chirrup. Viserys drew a pin, pricked the soft tissue between the dragon's scales at the chest. A bead of pale amber fluid welled. Dragon's first milk, secreted in small amounts when younglings shed baby scales. Daenerys recoiled, but curiosity rooted her. Viserys dabbed the shimmering drop onto Rhaego's lips. At first no reaction. Then the infant's tongue flicked, desperate, licking. He dabbed again. The babe swallowed. Color flushed faintly. The eyes cleared a fraction. Daenerys gasped, tears falling like sudden rain on coals. Viserys met her gaze. "Fire feeds fire," he said. "Tomorrow we sail north to Meereen. Its masters hoard apothecaries worthy of a prince." She bowed her head. "My brother, my king." The words warmed him. It was the first time she had named him so. Yet another flicker of doubt stirred. One crown may shine. If she crowned him king, did prophecy shift? Or did she merely bend until the day she rose? He dismissed the shadow. Fires danced through the night, and the dragons wheeled, painting constellations of orange on the star-drenched vault. The fleet made landfall at Meereen under ochre skies thick with slave smoke. Great pyramids loomed, each step terrace emblazoned with harpy standards flapping like tattered wings. Gates bored into the lower tiers vomited slave trains. Pale figures shackled wrist to throat, eyes scoured empty by whip and heat. Viserys came not as supplicant but storm. Stormfire and Meraxes dove along the main boulevard, scorching rows of harpy banners to cinders. Overseers ran, shrieking, arms upraised. The city guard, clad in lacquered shell armor, formed at pyramid bases but hesitated to loose spears when dragons roared overhead. At the foot of the Great Pyramid stood the Parnaruk, Meereen's triarch magistrate, robes heavy with gold torque, face striped in ochre war paint. He stammered offers of tribute: grain, concubines, gem-studded armbands. Viserys lifted a hand. "Bring me your healers," he commanded, "and the keys of every slave collar in this city." The demands collided like thunderhead against stone. Murmurs rippled among slave masters perched on balconies. But Meraxes landed, tail crashing into a statue of the harpy. Wing beats toppled the stone idol, its beaked face cracking across the avenue. Dust plumed. In the hush that followed, chains began to drop. First one, then 100, then a waterfall of iron clinking like hail on marble. The healers came. 3 gaunt eunuchs whose eyes glimmered with medicinal lore and fear. They knelt before Daenerys where she sat upon a palanquin draped in red silk. Rhaego coughed, a thin rasp, but his color had improved from dragon milk drafts. Hours stretched, herbs steamed, leeches swelled purple. Viserys pirouetted through negotiations like a sword dancer, signing decrees that freed 10,000 slaves in exchange for tribute caravans bound for Dragonstone once it fell. He permitted the masters to keep property if they pledged fealty, paid dragon tax, and forswore chains. Those who balked were given choice of exile or flame test upon the harpy's perch. None chose flame. By dusk, the Great Pyramid flew a new banner. 3 intertwined dragons, wings knotted into a crown. Below, former slaves lit torches in terraces. Their songs rose, raw but fierce, and the city answered with drum thunder rolling off stone. Mormont found Viserys atop the harpy's shattered plinth, wind tugging his hair. "You free cities faster than we commandeer them," the knight said, tone half wonder, half warning. Each victory feasts on coin and patience. Wars are won in 1,000 heartbeats. None may skip. Viserys stared northward where dusk dimmed into bruise. Each pulse of these cities is coin. An empire wants my crown. I'll bleed gold from its own veins. He descended, feeling the world tilt beneath each step, as though the pyramid had become a prow, slicing through time. Weeks bled into each other. Meereen to Yunkai, Yunkai to Astapor. The symbol repeated. Dragons swoop, chains break, banners fall. Every free man sworn, every master bent or burnt. Some whispered he was breaker of chains. Others that he forged new ones, invisible yet heavier, the chain of fear. Still, cities emptied coffers, and the golden company swelled. Rear-sworn unsullied thronged ranks. Slave children found training blades. Smiths hammered dragon sigils into brass. But flame has appetite. For every slave freed, grain stores groaned emptier. For every pyramid seized, a new front opened. Karth dispatched shadow councils that plotted in perfumed parlors. Pentos counted caravans now lost. Even Volantis rattled with grumbles that its Dragon King minted promises faster than silver. Viserys felt the strain like hairline fissures through a mirror. The more he conquered, the more the world's weight leaned upon the dragons. They grew apace, wings now spanning 15 paces, scales layered like plate mail. Yet with size came hunger impossible to sate nightly. Goatherds wept at emptied pens. Fishermen brought nets with only air. One dawn on Astapor's walls Stormfire refused butchered carcass, snarling until Viserys himself approached. The dragon butted his chest, eyes whirling. Beneath the thin mail, the scar above his heart pulsed painfully, heat baking ribs. Vision blurred. He sank to one knee, and suddenly Stormfire's fury cooled. The beast lay its head against his shoulder, crooning like a mourning dove. Heat drained into him, no, through him, and when he steadied, the dragon recoiled, satisfied, and devoured the meat. Melisandre's warning echoed. Shadows must feed flame. He rose shaken. Did the dragons draw strength from his very blood, beyond token cuts? If so, how long could a king burn before the wick cut to stump? He could not indulge weakness. That same day he convened a war council within the Citadel's Crimson Plaza. Daenerys sat to his left, pale but resolute, Rhaego sleeping peacefully in a carved onyx cradle beside her. Mormont, Miles, newly minted unsullied commanders, even emissaries from Tolos and Illyria attended. Maps unfurled. The Jade Sea, the Summer Sea, and above them all the blue mouth of the Narrow Sea and the dagger curve of Westeros. We sail north at first thaw, Viserys declared. Dragonstone falls first, ancestral hearth reclaimed. From there we break the crowns of Baratheon, Lannister, and every Turncloak lord. The realm has had years to soak in rot. One spark will set it alight. Debate surged, logistics, winds, counterfleets, the rumored Ironborn raids along Three Sisters, the Tyrell garrison at Storm's End. Viserys listened, nodding, but steel lodged behind every dark answer. The dragons burned worry to smoke. Finally, Daenerys rose. One more city begs our arms, Karth. Its warlock scheme beyond glass candle flame, and its spice kings by cell sails. We leave dagger at back if we sail, leaving them free. Viserys matched her gaze. He saw not sister, but queen tempered in desert. The dagger at back snaps when spine shifts. Karth will bend to wind of our wings after crown sits. Her eyes narrowed. Subtle jade flickered, but she bowed. Your will. That night they stood together on Astapor's seawall, watching phosphor jellyfish ghost beneath black water. When we were children, Dany said softly, I dreamt of dragons every night. They were warm, not frightening. I would wake cold and cry because I could not feel their fire. She touched Merix's talon where it gripped stone. Now I feel warmth again, and still cry, for the fire seems bound to your heart more than mine. Viserys traced the horizon where stars kissed sea. A crown is a forge. The one who wears it must hold flame lest metal cool. Crowns may burn flesh. She looked sideways, gentle. Do not forget water while you feed fire. Water. He thought of the tide pool in the dark, and how even wildfire seemed peaceful there. He turned, but words failed. Instead, he laid a hand on her shoulder. For an instant, they were simply orphans again, two strangers clinging to a name. Then Vigarian screeched overhead, and the moment shattered like brittle glass. Winter's first tongues licked the north rim of the narrow sea by the time the dragon fleet struck sails off Dragonstone's lee shore. Snow speckled black waves like ash. Wind reeked of sulfur and memory. The island loomed jagged, a dragon's spine petrified mid-roar. Basalt towers carved into spires shaped as claws, wings, horns. Between them wound narrow switchback roads glistening with salt frost. Viserys paced the prow, heart thundering. Here his bloodline had fled on wings of stone centuries past. Here the conqueror had dreamed 7 kingdoms in flame. Now he returned on real wings. No banners greeted them. Raven reports claimed Stannis Baratheon had seized Dragonstone before marching on King's Landing. But after his death, the island garrison swore to Tommen, then to nobody as wars drained gold. A handful of Sel's words and fisher wives remained, living in shadow of stone gargoyles. Landing parties met token resistance. Half-starved men wielding rusted spears. Stormfire's roar toppled will quicker than blades. By dusk, the stone drum echoed with new footfalls. Viserys climbed the narrow stair to the audience chamber where Aegon once sat, torchlight stroking walls carved into writhing serpents. He stood before the throne of cracked black rock shaped like fused dragon skulls. Dust lay thick. Spider silk draped the back like funeral lace. No rubies, no seats of comfort, just raw promise awaiting occupant. Viserys approached, boots echoing. He laid a hand on the stone. Cold leached into fingertips. Then warmth bled out as if the throne drank measure of him. Ghosts thrummed in porous basalt. Aegon, Rhaenyra, Maegor. Not voices, pressure. Eyes, waiting. Footsteps approached. Daenerys entered, Rhaego swaddled at her chest. Behind her, Mormont and 2 unsullied halted beneath a gargoyle, silent. Viserys did not turn. "It is time," he said. "For what?" Dany answered softly. "For fire made crown." He faced the throne and stepped upon the dais. But before knee bent, a tremor ran up his spine. Flames blossomed inside his skull. He staggered. Stormfire shrieked outside the window-slit balcony. Dragons beat wings. The scar above his heart ignited like poker brand. His vision swam red. In that molten haze he saw 2 shapes. Himself and Daenerys, both crowned, but only one crown aflame. The other melted, dripping. One crown may shine. He gripped the stone as wave of nausea buckled knees. Dany lunged, steadying him with free arm. Heat passed between them, an eddy of bloodline magic. Rhaego whimpered, and in that small cry Viserys felt something tear inside. The thread that had wound since first egg cracked. He straightened. Pain ebbed, not gone but caged. The decision clearer than any map. "Tomorrow," he whispered, voice raw, "we call banners of the narrow sea. But tonight, let Dragonstone no song." He turned, stepping down. Daenerys' eyes shimmered confusion. He brushed his fingers against Rhaego's tiny hand. The child cooed, fever forgotten, cheeks rosy with dragon milk strength. "In the belly of this fortress sleeps glass candles of Valyria," he said. "Let them burn again. You will light them. I will stand watch." Her breath caught, for in that moment she understood he offered her the same forge. Flame made flesh. But she saw too the cost in his pallor, the tremor he fought. "Brother," she began, uncertain. He smiled, weary yet fierce. "Queen," he answered. Unspoken covenant forged in that one shared title. Thunder boomed distant, no storm, but Meraxes and Vigarian breaking night sky, chasing wind. Their roar filled the stone drum like beating hearts. Viserys stepped aside, gesturing the hall to his sister. Torches wavered in an unseen gust as she ascended, cloak swirling scarlet. He followed, half a pace behind, because one crown may shine but its reflection must still glow on loyal steel. And as he walked, the pain beneath his scar eased. replaced by cold certainty. Dragons were fire, unsparing, unowned. To rule them, one must dare burn brighter than crown or prophecy. The rest was only ash in waiting. A breeze whispered through cracked shutters, bearing scent of frost and distant pines. Somewhere, across sundering seas and snow-choked valleys, wolves mustered behind white walls and lions sharpened claws in golden keeps. All would look south soon, drawn by fire on the horizon. Viserys inhaled that brittle air, tasting winter's dare. He watched Daenerys place a dragonglass candle in the socket, flame tongue flicking higher than any lamp. Shadows cavorted on carved walls. Wings overlapped horns, tongues of darkness writhed. His own shadow stretched beside hers, twin forms crowned in flicker light. He could not tell whose silhouette burned brighter, nor which would outlast the night. But he felt the world tilt toward them both, as if choosing. The dragons screamed again, a sound vast and ancient, promising that come dawn the sky itself would bear witness. Outside, snow began to fall upon the courtyard like soft falling ash, and where each flake landed steam rose, kissing basalt with whispered sighs. The dawn that followed Dragonstone's first night under living dragons unfurled in bleak shades of pewter and lilac, as though the sun itself approached the fortress with trepidation. Sea mists clung to the high ridges of rock like funeral shrouds, and wind keened through the stone gorges, carrying with it the distant hiss of waves gnawing volcanic teeth. On the outer battlements, seagulls wheeled in wide, wary arcs, unsettled by the three shapes that dominated the sky. Vegarian drifted low, curling lazy spirals over the sharp point. Stormfire rode the higher thermals where frost crystals birthed tiny rainbows. Meraxes carved immense circles that eclipsed patches of dawning light, each beat of his wings stirring eddies that ruffled the flags newly nailed to crumbling parapets. Below, in the belly of the ancient citadel, Dragonstone awakened. The once hollow kitchens brimmed with scents of sizzling hake and garlicked mussels hauled from tidapools before sunrise. Brazen shields hammered spits into black hearths caked by decades of soot. Unsullied patrols measured corridors that had long known only dust and echo. In the great yard, Cohoric pikemen formed drill squares, their breaths puffing as ghosts in the chill air. Ex-slaves from Meereen gaped at carved archways shaped like yawning drakes, half fearing the stone jaws might snap. Even the wind seemed attentive, pausing each time hooves clattered on flagstones, as if listening for commands that once rang beneath Maegor's iron rule. Viserys ignored the bustle. He stood in the gallery called the Spine, a long vault ribbed by pillars sculpted into vertebrae, and gazed through narrow arrow slits at a sea whittled by whitecaps. His hands gripped the balustrade's basalt lip, fingers numb from cold and tension alike. He had slept no more than an hour, and that on a bench beside a brazier whose embers did little to warm the chill that clung inside him. Since the seizure of Dragonstone, a throbbing ache had settled behind his eyes, pulsing with each breath. He suspected the dragons fed upon something immeasurable within him whenever they loosed fire. Each conquest seemed to draw marrow from his bones and leave him hollowed a little more. Yet the hollowness was not vacancy. It swirled with a bright urgency, an almost pleasant buzzing that spoke of farther horizons, taller pyres, and the final throne wrought in black and red. A footstep echoed at his back. Without turning, he knew it was Daenerys. No other tread carried both warmth and caution in equal measure. She halted a respectful pace away, adjusting the fur-lined cloak she had found in a deserted armory below the stone drum. Its white wool-hood-framed hair dulled by sea spray but still moon-pale, and in her arms Rhaego slept, cloths rustling softly with each delicate exhale. "Stormfire landed on the sea tower," she murmured. "The sentries fled." He startled no one, but the tower now lists from the weight. "I fear we must learn which ledges bear dragons and which crumble." "We will." Viserys' voice rasped dry. "Mortar cracks can be replaced." She stepped to the slit opposite him, gazing at the craggy coastline. "Glass candle flames held true through the night," she said. "No servants dared snuff them. Their glow touched every corridor." She hesitated. "I dreamt of Valyria, of blackened spires and a sky raining ash. Yet in the dream Rhaego rode a dragon's back above the doom." laughing. He steered through storms as if born to it. Dreams shape nothing until we bend them. Viserys drew breath, tasting salt and soot. A fortnight, perhaps 2, and we sail for Blackwater Bay. The Golden Company prepares siege equipment in the lower hold. Lannisport's shipwrights do brisk trade with King Tommen, but his war galleys are scattered, half to Old Town, half chasing Ironborn. King's Landing lies fat with fear. Daenerys shifted, the weight of strategy heavy on shoulders that had carried only survival until recently. Winter has laced the King's Road with snowdrifts 6 feet deep, so the Lion cannot call banners from the north in time. But Tyrell harvests still fill granaries at Bitterbridge. If the roses march, they arrive before spring thaw. "We break roses in fire," Viserys said, too quickly, and the ache behind his brow flared. He closed his eyes until the throb dimmed. "Dragon fire ends all sieges." She touched the railing. "Fire ends cities too. A throne atop cinders may not endure." He shot her a glance edged with frost. "You doubt flame. I doubt ash." Her tone was gentle yet unyielding. "When Astapor fell, you spared healers and children, yet you left storehouses empty. Their winter may starve them before next crescent. A ruler seeds seasons, brother." He inhaled, temper seething but bridled. "Seedlings drown if weeds choke ground. When the throne is mine, I will plant orchards from storm's end to the neck. But first, weeds burn." Silence stretched. Gulls cried. At last Daenerys nodded, though the motion carried weight. "The dragons grow restless," she said. "Yesterday Meraxes scorched the rookery because ravens flapped too near his perch. We must teach them restraint, or their fear may rival ours." "Fear can be harnessed." Viserys turned from the slit, cloak swirling. "The beasts obey me. When the time comes, they will burn only what I choose." "Are you sure?" Her question was soft, but the gallery stone made it echo like a challenge. He met her eyes, violet dashed with worry, and for an instant saw himself mirrored there. Gaunt cheeks, gold fragment at his brow shining like a curse. The hollow inside throbbed again. He forced a smile that tasted of iron. "We are Targaryen," he said. "Blood of the dragon does not fail." Yet even as he spoke, a fresh roar shook the fortress. Not the triumphant screech of flight, but a guttural bellow that rolled through passageways like thunder trapped in stone. Viserys and Daenerys exchanged a glance, then hurried toward the sound, Rhaego stirring against his mother's chest. Unsullied guards fell in behind them. The source proved to be the old sept, a circular chamber once adorned with statues of the Seven, but stripped of holy trappings after Maegor's purge. Stormfire crouched within, wings mantled, tail lashing broken pews into splinters. Before him cowered 2 rag-wrapped figures, fisherfolk perhaps, caught pilfering candle stubs. Their faces were bone-thin silhouettes in the dragon's searing glow. Viserys raised a hand, murmuring Valyrian syllables threaded with command. Stormfire's pupils, twin coils of molten blue, flicked toward him. The dragon exhaled a low growl that stirred embers from fallen torches but refrained from flame. The fisherfolk collapsed, weeping. One babbled in the guttural tongue of Massey's hook, pleading for mercy. The other clutched a burlap sack that rattled like clamshells. Viserys strode forward, boots crunching charred wood. "You trespass in the dragon's chapel," he said. "Why?" The man stammered that they sought salt to trade, that hunger gnawed and nets lay empty, that old gods cared nothing for castle borders. His words spilled in terror, but behind them Viserys heard truth. The island's leftover caretakers had scavenged crypts for years, and now his arriving army stripped shoreline bare. Fisherfolk starved by the same fire that promised them rebirth. Daenerys's gaze flicked from the peasants to her brother. She shifted Rhaego, and the infant whimpered. Stormfire lowered his head, nostrils flaring near the burlap sack. A single wisp of smoke curled. Viserys faced the peasants. "Take this lesson," he said. "Dragons guard the king's hearth, but a hearth feeds those who serve it." He pointed to an unsullied. 50 silver stags apiece. In return, they teach every fisherman on Dragonstone this rule. Do not enter halls of flame unbidden. Gratitude burst through their panic. They bowed until foreheads scraped ash. Stormfire chuffed, satisfied. Daenerys touched her brother's arm. Mercy builds as swiftly as fear, she murmured. Perhaps faster. He stiffened at the contact but said nothing. Inside, the hollow throbbed softer. Plans unfolded with ruthless precision. Raven scrolls flew to Gulltown. An offer of trade autonomy if Aaron banners remained folded. A second flight targeted White Harbor, promising exclusive crab tariffs and, should winter hunger press, the first grain shipments from future summer harvests. Viserys penned them himself, his script tight, each line sealed with a wax dragon wrought by Merryx's just-cooled flame. Diplomacy, he reasoned, was merely warfare waged in ink. Meanwhile, Mormont drilled a new formation he dubbed the Scales. Interlocked shield walls of unsullied spearmen interspersed with crossbow contingents. At his signal, dragons would strafe above the enemy ranks while the Scales advanced beneath the cover of heat and smoke. Mobile furnaces grinding fortifications to rubble. On windswept cliffs they practiced as viscid sleet needled armor. Dragons swooped low, scorching straw ramparts into hissing slurry. The smell of burnt hay and brimstone saturated the island. Every evening, however, Viserys felt his pulse weaken. Some nights he slept sitting, afraid that lying prone might invite dreams that devoured rest. On the fifth night after Stormfire's incident, he stood alone in the chamber of the painted table, tracing cracked lines of river valleys with a candle stub. Where once Maester Crescent's quill had scratched tiny heraldic sigils onto the great wooden map, runnels of old lacquer now resembled dried blood. Sea monsters carved upon the table's edge leered at him like silent judges. Footsteps approached. He tensed. Illyrio Mopatis shuffled into candlelight, cheeks gleaming with seawater dew, though he had not braved the spray. His embroidered mantle glittered saffron and jade, as if mocking Dragonstone's austere basalt. "My prince," the Magister crooned. "The fleet carpenters request fresh oak for patching wargalley keels. The island's stores shrink." "Raid Driftmark," Viserys replied without turning. "Valerians will fall in line or burn." Illyrio's hands fluttered like plump birds. "Prudent, of course, yet I bring sweeter tidings." He produced a scroll bound with a black sealing wax. "Karth extends friendship through trade envoys, contingent on Dragonflame demonstration at their summer harbor. They whisper of 70 warships and vaults heavy with gold. A new free city, for all intents." "Flattery," Viserys waved him away. "They fear we circle their shipping lanes." "Fear and fascination." Illyrio leaned closer, voice dropping. "They question if a dragon might be gifted or loaned against loans." The fat man's rings clinked on the edge of the painted table. "Imagine warm coffers brimming with milled silver, enough to outfit 10 armies. Dragons hatch again, but coin still rules humankind." Viserys' jaw tightened. "No dragon leaves my sight." Of course. Illyrio bowed, jowls quivering. "Merely a rumor to crush under talons." He cleared his throat. "Yet coins do buy loyalty, and loyalty ferries fleets. The Iron Bank of Bravos now investigates whispers of a Targaryen resurgence. They recall Robert's unpaid debts. Should Bravos lend Tyrells the gold to raise fresh armies? Enough!" Viserys slammed the candle stub onto the table, wax spattering the painted Dornish marches. "Did Aegon barter Balerion for silver?" Illyrio swallowed, eyes darting to the map's scorched surface. "Aegon owed no cell's words, my prince." Viserys advanced a step. Illyrio retreated too. The hollow inside roared, and he felt his fingertips prickle with heat. "Go," he said. "See the carpenters get their oak. Remind Driftmark that Valerian blood once bore dragon riders." Illyrio bowed himself from the chamber, his perfume wafting behind him like wilted orchids. Viserys leaned on the painted table until tremor ebbed. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying distant dragon cries that thudded against the chamber's stained glass arrow slits. He closed his eyes, exhaling until the thrum behind his skull quieted. When he opened them, the flicker of candlelight on lacquer seemed to ripple, as though tiny waves lapped at miniature coastlines. For a breath, the world tilted. The table appeared a floating continent adrift on black ocean, and he, a spire of flame sprouting from Dragonstone's pebble. He pressed thumb to the spot where King's Landing lay. "Soon," he whispered to the wooden city. "Soon you learn true heat." Snow thickened across Dragonstone by morning. Flurries blew through cracked arrow loops, dusting torch sconces and quenching flames. Runners reported ice forming on lines that tethered galleys in harbor. Supplies of fresh sheep from Massey's Hook met delays as fishing boats hugged coastlines to avoid winter swells. Daenerys convened a meeting in the Hall of Dragons, once feasting ground for Targaryen court. There, under vaulted ribs carved into wings, stood Ser Jorah, Miles, Talassos of Volantis, and Grey Worm, captain of the Unsullied. They debated timing, whether to risk a winter crossing of Blackwater Bay. Grey Worm insisted discipline would hold. Cold meant little to men hardened by Astapor's pits. Talassos worried storms might scatter supply hulks critical to feeding armies post-landing. Miles offered to hire storms and smuggling crews if coin flowed. Viserys listened apart, leaning against a pillar shaped into a rearing drake. His eyes felt grainy, lids heavy. When Mormont asked his counsel, he lifted a hand. "We sail within the fortnight. Delay breeds doubts. Doubts breed betrayal." Before dissent could grow, a horn blast rang from the curtain wall, 3 notes descending, the signal for arrival by sea. Moments later, a sentry burst into the hall, face white with wind. "A ship from the north, your grace," he breathed. "Black hull, direwolf. Banner." Viserys straightened. "Stark. Bolton, mayhap?" The flayed man once flew red. "No." Daenerys stepped forward, Rego snug against her breast. "Stark sails show gray direwolf on white, not black. Who leads?" The sentry shook his head. "Sigils unheard, but the crew claims parley under flag of truce." Viserys exchanged a glance with Mormont. "Bring their captain to the outer keep. 6 guards with crossbows. I will see which wolf dares my den." The captain arrived beneath noon's ashen light. Snowflakes haloed her dark hair, fine as midnight silk. She wore sable leathers trimmed in gray fur. Her cloak clasped a direwolf forged of dusk iron, the beast's yellow eyes set with twin topaz. At her hip hung a slender long sword with a pommel carved like a weirwood leaf. She moved neither timidly nor haughtily, but with the assured silence of one long accustomed to forest shade. Behind her followed 5 sailors, each bearing chests shaped for coin. She halted 10 paces before Viserys, who waited flanked by Unsullied at the courtyard's center. Dragons watched from ramparts. Vigarian bristling, mare axes coiled, Stormfire crouched on a parapet like a living gargoyle. The woman dipped her head. "My lord," she said, voice low, "I am Alanna Mormont of Bear Island, daughter of Jarrell. I bring words from the north, from Winterfell restored." "Mormont." Viserys' gaze flicked to Ser Jorah, who stiffened, pride and pain mingling in his eyes. "Yes." Her chin lifted slightly. "My house stands unbroken. Winterfell's banners gather beneath Queen Sansa Stark, Wardness of the North in her own right." "Queen." Viserys felt a tick of annoyance. "Tommen sits the Iron Throne." Alanna's mouth curved into something faint. "In the north, the Iron Throne's writ grows thin. Walls crumble when wolves howl loud enough." She motioned to the chests now stacked beside her. "We bring an offering, a loan of steel for steel, 2,000 bars of northern iron, shaped for arrowheads and wide blades. And this." She produced a small box bound in pale weirwood. Opening it revealed a dagger, dragonglass blade gleaming with oil-slick iridescence. "Forged in secret caves beyond the wall. A gift in good faith." Viserys took the dagger, weighing it. The blade was light yet thrummed with power older than Valyria. "Generous," he said. "What price purchases such gifts?" Alanna met his eyes. "Queen Sansa asks alliance. She would see Lannister power broken but will not trade northern necks for southern whim. She asks assurances that when King's Landing burns, winter grain sails to White Harbor, that northern lords may rule their holdfasts absent southern coin collectors, that old God's ways remain law from Barrowton to Shadow Tower. Daenerys stepped forward. What of the Night's Watch? Does it still man the wall? Life yet clings, Alanna answered, but the watch bleeds. If war climbs their ramparts, winter's teeth follow fast. Viserys closed the box, mind racing. The North's loyalty could choke Lannister supply lines, cut paths to Vale, deny the Stag Crown any refuge beyond Neck. Yet they asked almost a kingdom's autonomy. Could he promise that, then hold? His gaze drifted to the dragons perched overhead. Fire might cow proud wolves, but cinders could not till frozen fields. He needed allies, not ashes. He turned to Daenerys. What say you, sister? She regarded Alanna, a mother weighing a stranger's warrant. Rhaego squirmed, and she soothed him with quiet Valyrian. Wolves do not kneel lightly, she said, but they keep oaths. The realm we build must share blood with North Wind, lest it crack and freeze. Viserys felt pressure behind his forehead pulse. He thought of Tyrion's cunning, of Tyrell gold, of Iron Bank coin waiting to fill Lion's coffers. He pictured fire sweeping Red Keep, followed by years of guerrilla frost wars should North turn foe. A slower burn, perhaps, would forge stronger iron. He faced Alanna. Tell your queen, accept our banner, and the North shall rule itself, paying tribute only in goodwill and steel. Swear wolves' fangs face the lion, not the dragon, and grain shall flow north come spring. The old gods will find no foreign priests at their weirwoods. Alanna's expression softened, almost smile. She bent knee on snow-dusted stone. Then House Mormont kneels as shield to your flame. May we stand warm together. Viserys extended the dragonglass dagger. She accepted, rising. Snow swirled between them, and above, Vegarian unfurled wings, scattering flakes into glittering vortices. The pact locked, preparations accelerated. Grey Worm oversaw loading of northern iron onto barges bound for smithies on the mainland. Miles the Tawny drilled the newly expanded fleet, now swollen with captured corsair cogs, Myrine's triremes refitted with rams shaped like dragon jaws, and a half-dozen sleek skiffs bearing stark pennants. Daenerys spent evenings at Rhaenyra's Old Solar, reading cracked tomes on dragon lore. She sought ways to share command, rites of bonding, whispered spells lost in doom. One parchment suggested dragons responded to songs sung in certain harmonic intervals. Another told of old Valyrian horn able to bind WIRMS but kill the blower. Each discovery she relayed to Viserys, who listened with hollow eyes yet nodded. One night she found him standing in the courtyard where mare axes dozed curled around a pyre of driftwood. His shoulders sagged, and frost rimed his lashes though he seemed unaware. She touched his sleeve, he flinched, as if roused from dreams. His skin blazed hot despite cold air. You burn, she whispered. I burn always. His smile cracked. A king of coals. Rest, she urged. Let me watch the night. Rhaego sleeps sound. Stormfire patrols the cliffs. Even kings breathe. You speak of mercy again. He turned away. The throne takes breath, Dany. It drags every moment through barbs until lungs are flax. There is no rest. She stepped in front of him, voice trembling with contained fury. We have shared dust and exile. I will not watch you crumble before you sit. Let me bear some weight. He stared, eyes stark candles. Then, slowly, he reached and clasped her forearm. Their earlier tension cooled into fragile solidarity. When dawn comes, he said, we test a new bond. Choose one dragon. Sing whatever song those scrolls whisper. If fire bends, we may share burden. Until then, stand with me. She nodded, tears glazing lashes. Together they watched snow tumble in steady hush. For minutes they were two children beneath robes too large, clinging to warmth no father ever offered. Dawn bruised the horizon violet. Wind scoured fresh tracks across Dragonmont's slopes. On the training ridge west of the Stone Drum, soldiers assembled below roped perches where dragons roost. Daenerys stood at the ridge's center, Rhaego swaddled behind in a wicker crib lined with sheepskin. Her silver hair rippled, moonbright against black basalt. Viserys watched from a dais flanked by banners. Illyrio, Mormont, and Talassos waited, breath-pluming. A hush swept the assembly as Daenerys lifted a flute carved from some translucent white bone. The hornless instrument described in the scrolls as Ziathra, once used in Valyrian hatcheries. She had spent hours cleaning salt corrosion from its fingerholes. She raised it, exhaled. A single note emerged, low and hollow, vibrating in air like distant thunder. She shifted fingers, letting a second tone slide beneath the first, forming an interval that tingled teeth. Dragons' heads snapped toward her. Soldiers tensed. Daenerys' closed eyes played on slow, mournful phrasing that seemed less melody than incantation. The sound wound through morning wind, gathering resonance. Stormfire shifted first, pupils dilating to black discs. The beast launched, wings thumping. Instead of arcing skyward, it coasted low, drawing lazy spiral that narrowed toward Daenerys. Snow swirled in its wake. Viserys felt his breath hitch. The hollow inside blazed. Not pain, but something like awe. Stormfire alighted a dozen paces from Daenerys, tail sweeping basalt. Its neck bowed, enormous head lowering until snout brushed the flute's bone tip. She held the note, unwavering. Meraxes rumbled deep in chest, wings rustling. Vigarian chirred, cocking head, but remained perched. Daenerys opened eyes. The note tapered into silence. She reached with ungloved hand, resting it on Stormfire's scalding nose. Steam curled around her skin. Guards gasped. The dragon exhaled slowly, as if careful not to burn her. In that moment, a tether invisible yet palpable shimmered between woman and WIRM. Threads of sound and fire braided by blood. Viserys' mind roared with possibilities. Armies riding 2, 3 dragons at once. Pincer strikes from sky. Enemies forced to choose which flame to fear. His knees wobbled. Relief warred with jealousy. A jolt of lightning through old scar. For a heartbeat, he envisioned Stormfire turning on him, blue flames severing crown from brow. Instead, the dragon remained still, eyes half-lidded in calm. Daenerys lowered her hand. She looked to Viserys then, question and triumph mingling. He answered with nod, a sharp tilt of chin sealing new balance. Cheers burst among soldiers. Unsullied stamped spear butts. Brazen shields swung helmets aloft. Wind carried their roar down cliffs, scattering gulls. Viserys stepped from dais, pain behind eyes subsiding. Perhaps sharing fire lessened its bite. He felt lighter, as though weight had shifted across shoulders broader than his alone. That evening, ravens arrived, 3 scrolls bound with green wax bearing lotus sigils of Highgarden. Lord Mace Tyrell wrote humility flavored in honey. King Tommen requests parley, the reach wearies of war. Yet between lines Viserys smelled stall. Tyrell armies massed at Bitterbridge, waiting to see which way wind blew. He penned reply promising safe parley in Storm's End 1 moon hence. Enough time for dragons to circle, for wolves to howl. Meanwhile, stark iron was forged into arrowheads scored with dragonglass shards. Weapons meant not for Lannisters but others rumored to stalk snows. Wights, shades, things of winter tales. Viserys offered a shipment to Winterfell as goodwill, ensuring North's bond. But in secret he ordered half the supply kept, unknowing what foes a dragonfire throne might awaken. If ghosts rose for his bloodline, he would greet them armed. Snowstorms brewed over Shipbreaker Bay. The fleet readied nevertheless. On a dawn carved from steel sky, sails unfurled and lines creaked as gales snapped banners into dragon silhouettes. Viserys stood at Silver Dawn's prow again, but this time Daenerys stood beside him, Stormfire crouched between, Rhaego strapped in cradle across her chest. Vigarian perched on the prow's figurehead, tail lashing spray. Meraxes circled aloft, roars echoing. Soldiers below beat spear butts to drum cadence, chanting a name newly coined on deck plates, Twin Flames. For though House Targaryen's arms bore 3 heads, sailors saw 2 figures command the sky. Prince and Princess, halves of one inferno, forging crown between them. Viserys inhaled salt and frost. The hollow still burned, but now it pulsed in harmony with Stormfire's wing beats, tempered by Daenerys' steadier flame. He felt no less king, only more, as if crown grew facets each time it shared light. Ahead, beyond pall of winter haze, the shoreline of Blackwater Bay waited. Fires flickered faint on horizon, torches atop King's Landing's battlements, unaware how soon sunrise would pale before dragons. And somewhere within those walls, a golden boy-king clutched a scepter too large, while advisors quarreled in shadowed halls promising safety that could not exist when sky itself rebelled. Viserys' fingers tightened on rail. Flame licked his spine, eager. The future raced toward them like breakers against basalt cliffs. Unstoppable, thundering, scattering foam of what once was. He glanced sidelong to Daenerys. She met his gaze, and without words they understood. Tomorrow they would walk into storms yet uncharted, tethered by blood and song. Dragons stalked the vaulting heaven above. Below, men sharpened spears. Between, a crown waited on a throne of swords. One crown may shine, Melisandre had warned. But fire forged twins alike, and perhaps twin suns burned brighter than prophecy ever dared. Viserys lifted his hand. Somewhere beyond the fleet's perimeter a horn moaned, low and steady. Sails billowed, oars dipped, hulls surged, dragons screamed, and the sea itself seemed to run warmer in their wake. Toward King's Landing they sailed, toward destiny written on scales and sealed in glass candles, toward flame enough to blind the world, yet warm it too if wielded with care. Snow flurried and melted on deck planks still hot from dragonfire tests hours earlier. Wind howled questions none yet could answer, and in its echo, the twin rulers of House Targaryen held course, hearts alight with promise and peril braided, flames dancing across silver hair and golden eyes that knew dawn's harsh truth. The only path now led through fire, and whatever remained after would bear a name the world would remember or curse until mountains crumbled into sea. In the cabin below, the painted table waited, its lacquered rivers hungry for new lines, arrows north and spear points west, loops of supply and rings of siege. Tonight they would redraw fates again. But for now, deck timbers thrummed beneath boots, dragons wheeled above, and every soul aboard felt the tremor of history cresting like a great breaker. They were poised upon it, bound ahead by roaring surf of war, carried by wings no mortal power could cage. Viserys closed his eyes to savor the wind's sting on his scar. He smiled, and the flame inside him steadied. No longer hollow hunger, but furnace at balance. He opened eyes as the prow split another wave, spray rising in glittering arc. And on that gleam he saw reflected 3 dragons, 2 rulers, 1 kingdom yet to burn or bloom by their will alone. The sailcloth snapped. The horn sounded again. Ahead, snow clouds parted to reveal a sliver of cold, rising sun, and it blazed not gold nor red but a fierce white that seemed wrought of dragonfire itself, promising nothing save light so bright it might sear old shadows to dust. The wind howled in ragged nips at the edges of sailcloth, and the silver dawn creaked like an old warhorse eager for the charge. Dawn's weak halo had climbed scarcely 2 fingers above the teeth of the sea when the first flurries faded, leaving a pale hush over the water. Here, at the mouth of Blackwater Bay, winter arrived not with blizzards but with an iron stillness. An icy tension braided through the air like wire. Ship after ship slid through the swell, dark hulls bearing fresh-forged wolf-head arrowheads in crates and barrels of Myronese fire oil tucked in straw. A faint layer of rime glimmered on every spar where breath condensed and died. Viserys Targaryen let the hush settle into his bones. He stood on the high quarterdeck beside Daenerys, who cradled Rhaego beneath a wolf fur wrap lined in red silk. The babe dreamed despite the cold. Each tiny exhale puffed a milky cloud that drifted past his mother's collar. Above them 3 shadows executed their endless ballet. Mare axes ranging wide, Stormfire weaving beneath, and little Vegarian corkscrewing with jealous vigor between. When a shaft of wan sunlight pierced the slate clouds, all 3 dragons lit for an instant like embers flung from a forge hammer. No war horns yet, no drums. The fleet ghosted forward under shortened canvas. Every man aboard had orders to move as if stalking prey. The oars kept time in grunts instead of shouted cadence, and the brazen shields wore cloaks drawn over their bronze, lest moon or dawn blink catch the metal and send a glint to the enemy's watchtowers. Somewhere beyond the headland, King's Landing nursed its usual stench of tanneries, docks, and fretful noble knights. Yet out here the only smell was brine and pitch and the faint, sweet whiff of dragon oil leaking from sealed casks. Ser Jorah approached with a frost-rimmed helm tucked under one arm. Scouts slipped ashore at Driftmark. No Lannister outriders south of Wendwater. Their eyes fix west. Euron's raids plague the coast. Small folk speak of a new lion levy, but no banners marched from Storm's End these past 10 days. He paused. Sell sails in the bay, though. 24 at least, Tyroshi and Pentoshi marks. Viserys' breath steamed. They will flee when they see fire. If not, we give them fire to flee from. Jorah nodded. His gaze drifted to Daenerys, and a shadow of pride tempered by old sorrow flickered across his features. He bowed and withdrew. Daenerys watched the night go, then faced her brother. Stormfire sends feelings through the bond like tides. He tastes fear on the water, but not ours. Fear belongs to the unmarked, Viserys answered. He flexed his right hand. The healed skin above his heart pulsed warm as a banked coal beneath leather. Yet caution seeds victory. Tonight we anchor south of Driftmark's lighthouse. At moonrise we release the ravens. Daenerys's silver brows lifted. To whom? Highgarden's spies, Riveruns, and every fishmonger in King's Landing, he said. Let rumor outrun the mast. A crowned dragon becomes larger in stories than in sky. She traced a palm along the rail's frost, leaving a ghost of warmth. When stories grow too large, they topple under their own weight. We must not promise storms we cannot shape. He opened his mouth, but a shrill cry from aloft severed the debate. Vigarion arrowed past the prow, wings clipping spindrift. 20 ship lengths ahead, a single mast rose from the morning haze, thin, solitary, flying a blue pennon with a silver mermaid. Claw Isle's lords. The vessel bobbed on slack anchor, perhaps a fishing cog pressed into picket duty. Sailors within the crow's nest waved frantic semaphore flags. Alarm would race up the coastline in a matter of minutes. Viserys stepped to the rail. Below, brazen shields notched crossbows and waited for command, but he raised a staying hand. Instead, he breathed one short Valyrian phrase, harsh as struck flint. Vigarion banked, golden eyes flaring, then spat a single ribbon of fire no wider than a scythe blade. It lanced the cog's mainsail from peak to yard. Cloth smoldered so swiftly the mast itself blackened like charred bone. Yet the hull, dripping and sea-soaked, only smoked where sparks landed. The ship drifted, its pennon shriveling upon shriveling, crew scrambling with lines to douse flames licking rigging. Daenerys exhaled. A warning and nothing more. We light the wick, not the barrel, Viserys agreed. Let them sail home with tongues loose. The fleet slid past burning canvas, leaving the cog coughing in their wake. By mid-morning, the headland's crooked spine swallowed the stricken vessel from sight. Only a trailing plume of smoke told tale of dragons to any watcher on distant walls. When the sun reached its zenith, a pale coin smudged by High Cirrus, Dragonstone's flagship flotilla anchored behind the grounded hulk of an ancient warship long since surrendered to barnacles. Here, reef fingers broke the chop, creating a lagoon of clouded green water perfect for concealment. The surviving docks of Old Tarth fishermen offered little mooring, so planks were lashed from hull to hull, turning the inner anchorage into a timber spiderweb. Fires were forbidden. Cold rations of salt cod and hard bread filled bellies while hands tightened leather, sharpened blades, whispered prayers. Viserys paced the Silver Dawn's quarterdeck, scroll tube in grip. Illyrio whirled about him like a corpulent shadow, murmuring of dispatch riders and fluctuating grain prices. Talassos brought fresh charts that mapped every shoal of Blackwater Bay. Jorah oversaw the drill of boarding parties on the main deck. Every few moments the roar of a dragon high overhead rumbled through timbers. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the entire fleet waited to exhale until fire gave it leave. By evening, the water turned mirror-smooth, reflecting clouds bruised purple by a coming storm. Daenerys emerged from below decks wearing black riding leathers trimmed in scarlet thread. The bone flute dangled from a cord at her neck. Its ivory surface gleamed like a ghost's tooth in the failing light. Rhaego lay strapped to her back in a fur sling, tiny fists clutching a strip of softened leather cut from Stormfire's shed scale. She joined Viserys at the prow without speaking. Together they watched the horizon darken into a smear where sea merged with gathering thunderheads. Lightning flickered once, a distant white vein. Almost immediately afterwards, shouts rose from the starboard watch. 2 sails, then 4, then 8, bloomed on the edge of sight, oars glinting like beetle shells beneath flashing sky. Tyroshi colors, purple and teal, their hulls trimmed with gilded scrollwork. Cell sails hired by someone's purse and bold enough to test Dragon's claim on these waters. Viserys' pulse thrummed. He turned to Daenerys. "We cannot risk broadside exchanges before the siege. Each wasted barrel of fire oil thickens walls we've yet to breach." Daenerys nodded slowly. She lifted the flute, placed it to lips. A hush settled across the flagship. Oarsmen froze mid-stroke. Even Illyrio's babbling ceased. She blew 3 notes, low, lower, then a sudden high keening cry. The tones slid together like blades being drawn. Somewhere aloft, Meraxes answered, a roar deep enough to vibrate keel timbers. Stormfire banked on thunder gusts, descending until its vast silhouette masked the lightning flash. Vegarian flitted nervous circuits above. Daenerys' second series of notes wound upward, a spiral of sound that seemed to twist into the clouds themselves. Stormfire's chest expanded, blue-white embers flickering between armored plates. Meraxes folded wings, stooping like an enormous hawk. Then, as one, both dragons stooped upon the cell-sail line. White fire and cobalt flame met the first galley simultaneously. Lightning cracked overhead, and for a breath it was impossible to tell which blaze issued from sky and which from WRM. 2 masts burst apart, projection of charred planks cartwheeling over wave peaks. Another galley executed a desperate turn only to present its broadside to Meraxes. The green-gold dragon's roar shook men into the sea even before flame washed decks clean. A third ship attempted flight, but ropes tangled in panic, and Stormfire's second gout engulfed the stern, turning gilded scrollwork into dripping slag. The Tyroshi line broke in less than a minute, scattered survivors flinging themselves into freezing water to outrun fire that floated and clung like living oil. Viserys watched dispassionately, where he once might have felt the dragon's heat in his own veins, an almost exultant elation. Now only a muted ache stirred behind his eyes, as if the flame required a cost he had already paid. Still, some part of him savored the precision. Dragons wielded like scalpels rather than hammers. Daenerys lowered the flute. Thunder grumbled, but the cell sails were finished. Broken hulls drifted ablaze, lighting the bay like floating pyres. Rain began, soft at first, then heavier, hissing against planking and dousing stray sparks. In that sudden hush after battle and before downpour grew wild, Viserys turned to his sister and spoke more softly than the rain. "You do not merely charm them," he said. "You command." Her lashes, damp with sleet, fluttered once. "They listen because I listen first. I feel how they breathe, how the air bends over their scales. Fire has language. I am only learning the letters." "Then right soon," Viserys murmured. "For the page grows hungry." Night swallowed color. Only the flaming hulks and the occasional ripple of dragonfire lit the anchored flotilla. Viserys retreated to the Silver Dawn's war cabin, its curved walls lined by map shelves and a single brazier set low to preserve night vision on deck. He spread fresh parchment across the chart table, quill poised. A myriad of lines, arrows, and ciphered symbols already crisscrossed the bay outline. Yet his hand hovered, uncertain. Footfalls sounded. This tread he knew without sight, Mormont. "My prince," the knight said quietly. "You've not eaten since mid-morn. The men whisper you wade deeper into dark waters than any dragon might burn clear." Viserys said, "Cool down. Men whisper because they seek torches in fog. Give them a crown and they'll see noon at midnight." Mormont stepped closer. Candlelight revealed the lines etched deeper around the knight's eyes than when they first met across Illyrio's manse. "Crown or no, a king must sleep to dream paths forward. You bleed inside, even if you show no cut." Viserys almost laughed, an edge in the sound. "Bleeding made me live meanwhile others burned. Sire, I survived Drogo's molten gold. I survived Darion's gallows in Pentos, the streets of Myr, the pits of Qohor. Each scar is a rung climbing. What is one more?" He clasped the pendant at his collar, a shard of Merryx's eggshell polished into dull jade. Heat seeped against skin. "Tell them the king is forging." Yora hesitated. "When iron works too long, it cracks." Viserys' gaze flicked to the brazier's coals. Sparks breath-pulsed like tiny dying suns. "Then I become Valyrian steel, folded not cracked." He dismissed the knight gently but firmly. The door shut, leaving cinder hiss the only sound. Viserys dipped the quill again, mind turning battle permutations. Where catapults built on dragonstone would wheel to the mudgate, how wolf arrowheads might arc over scorpions on the city walls, which blocks thatched roofs would first catch when dragonflame licked the flea-bottom warrens. Yet the ache behind his brow swelled, a dull, feverish thunder, ink blurred on parchment. He pressed palm to forehead, felt sweat chilled by cabin air. In the moment's vertigo, he saw again Melisandre's ruby eyes. "One crown may shine." He shoved the memory away, but the ache persisted, drilling deeper behind the gold shard still fused to his temple. Each pulse felt like a hammer strike forging something unspeakable in that hidden place where flame met fear. He forced breath slow. "No," he whispered to the emptiness. "We share this burden now." As if summoned, a soft rap came at the door. Daenerys entered, Stormfire's scale cloak draped over her shoulders. Shadows danced across her face, making her look both young and ancient. She carried 2 tin cups filled with goat broth warmed above a candle. "Drink," she said, passing one. The broth tasted of garlic and bone. Heat traveled down Viserys' spine, loosening the iron clamp between shoulder blades. They sat in silence, listening to distant splash of waves against hull. From above deck, an occasional crackle of burnt timber shifting in the floating pyres punctuated the hush. Daenerys finished her cup, set it aside. "I glimpsed King's Landing tonight," she said. Caught between lightning flashes, the walls looked small, like a child's sandcastle waiting for tide. "Tide comes," he answered. She stroked the flute's bone surface. "Stormfire sang in my dreams, not battle songs, lullabies. He showed me a city not burning, but blossoming. Gardens blooming where blackened stones once lay." She met his eyes. "Do you ever dream of peace?" Viserys considered. "I dream of silence," he said at last. "A quiet throne room where no one begs, where no one curses. Perhaps that is peace." "Peace is not silence. It is harmony." She leaned forward, voice low. "You wield flame like hammer on steel, but sometimes steel learns shape beneath a gentler hand." His jaw tightened. "A gentle hand does not break lion's teeth, nor mend broken bones." Her gaze softened. "When this storm ends, will you still feel the fire, or only ashes?" He looked away to the painted table lying rolled beneath oilskin against the bulkhead. "Ash breeds new shoots," he said, though the words tasted stale. "Spring follows winter. Spring follows storms that leave enough soil." She reached and touched his scar. Her fingers warm on the place gold had once set fire. "Your flame burns bright, brother, but bright flames need vessel lest they gutter. Let me share more." He closed eyes. In darkness he felt the ache pulse, then ebb beneath her touch. A weight lifted, only a breath, but enough. He nodded. "We march together," he whispered, and felt the oath loop around them like braided silver. Morning came on icy breath. Snow dusted the decks but melted where dragonfire residue still clung. Scouts returned on swift skiffs with word that the capital's harbor chains were raised. 3 Lannister galleys patrolled mouth of river, signal flags snapping frantic. Black smoke funneled from flea-bottom chimneys. Smiths forging scorpion bolts, no doubt. Yet gates remained open to traffic of wagons laden with winter grain from the Reach, escorted by tired Tyrell guards. Viserys gathered his captains on the Dawn's main deck. The plan poured from his lips like molten iron into molds they had prepared. At dusk, while Tyrell convoy enters city, the fleet will drift north under the cover of snow squall swirling off the stormlands. Grey worm scales disembark on the western mudflats below the Lion Gate just after midnight. Stark longbowmen landed from Galley White Ghost will hold the ridge above the Hook, sowing confusion with dragonglass-tipped fire arrows. Dragons strike the walls only after the second salvo of arrows, and only at scorpion nests along the battlements, not the gate towers. They must keep a breach narrow, else the city burn before surrender. Daenerys added soft-spoken amendments. Once gate control is taken, unsullied detachments secure the granaries, protecting citizens from starvation. The dragons will swoop over the Great September but refrain from flame unless crossbow bolts rise. She would lead Stormfire personally in the first pass. Viserys would command Meraxes and hold Vigarion in reserve for rapid response should Ironborn sails appear. No one questioned the twin command. Where once murmurs had filled braziers, now silent acceptance greeted each order. Soldiers glanced between the siblings as if twins of ash and ember best rode the deck. Illyrio stumped forward at last, beard peppered with frost. Glory assures rich harvest, my prince, but coffers must seed fields. The Tyrells. Viserys' gaze cut him short. When a garden burns, the rose worries over water, not coin. Illyrio bowed, retreating like a tide. Orders dispersed the captains to tasks, leaving Viserys and Daenerys alone. The wind carried a hush before storm, clean, expectant, brittle. You lead the first stoop, Viserys said quietly. Do not overpress. Even a dragon's hide may learn pain. I will heed, she promised. She adjusted the bone flute's cord. And you, guard the sky's open flank. If scorpions swivel our way, I will be flame before them, he finished, an echo of earlier promise. Their eyes held. Somewhere behind masts, Rigo's cry rose, hungry, insistent. The sound rooted them in flesh beyond prophecy. A child's need amidst the swirl of empire. Daenerys smiled, soft and urgent, and stepped away toward the cabin where a wet nurse waited. Viserys watched her depart, cloak's scarlet hem brushing snow. For a heartbeat he saw two paths fork upon the deck, one lined with raging flame, the other dappled by sunlight filtering through new-bloomed almond trees. He exhaled, scattering the vision like ash. Above, Meraxes cast a vast shadow sliding over the water, wings beating once, twice, then angling north, as if impatience itself sought the city's walls. Viserys felt the answering tug in his chest. He turned to the rail, watched the dragon vanish into the slate clouds where a fledgling storm brewed. In its wake the world seemed to fall silent, the hush before a great choir draws breath. Night would come soon, and with it the first hammerstroke of siege. His muscles vibrated with caged thunder. Still the ache returned, gentle now, persistent, a reminder of cost. He tightened fists, nails biting flesh. Let it cost, he thought. Let blood burn if it births dawn. He turned from sea to maps and men. The deck pitched beneath his stride, but his step never faltered. And overhead, dark wings beat, heralding the hour when crown fire and crown song would test which light truly shone, and whether two flames could blaze beside each other without merging into one searing sun or collapsing into the black void left when such radiance spent itself at last. But that reckoning lay beyond the walls of a city yet to wake. For now the storm thickened. Snowflakes drifted across taut rigging, and, like drawn breath suspended, the fleet waited for dusk to fall.